Chapter 1824. Song Qing-shu was speechless. Wu Yazi's choice of disciples was really bad. One was sinister and vicious, and the other was stupid and muddle-headed. They couldn't even tell who was friend and who was enemy. Unfortunately, he couldn't tell them the reason in front of so many people, which put him in a difficult position. At this time, Xian Cheng saw that something was wrong, so he went straight to the hole in the wooden house. Song Qing-shu's expression changed, and he shot a strand of sword qi at him. Xian Cheng was prepared and dodged to the side, but this put him further away from the hole in the wooden house. Song Qing-shu waved his sleeves, and a huge rock flew over. Su Xinghe stretched out his hand to stop it, but the rock suddenly became shorter, and he missed. By the time he realized it, the rock was already blocking the hole in the wooden house. Not far away, Tianshan Tongris sneered, "You overestimate yourself." She could see that Song Qing-shu was holding back. Otherwise, although Su Xinghe could barely be considered a master, he would be seriously injured if he tried to stop the rock that was full of inner force. Unfortunately, Su Xinghe didn't see anything wrong. Instead, he was angry. "Prince Song, are you looking for trouble? Although the deaf and mute sect isn't a big sect, we shouldn't be humiliated like this," Song Qing-shu said indifferently. "Since you're loyal to Wu Yazi, I won't argue with you." Su Xinghe opened his mouth, but in the end, he was afraid of his great reputation. Ding Chuanxiu was his main enemy, and he shouldn't provoke another big enemy. He didn't say anything, so Xian Cheng had to say something. "What do you mean? This is between me and Mr. Su's sect. What does it have to do with you?" Hearing his words, some people had a strange look on their faces. They thought that Shaolin Xian Cheng had always been arrogant and believed that strength was the truth. When did he become so reasonable? Song Qing-shu looked at him deeply. "You're in such a hurry to go in. Do you have any ulterior motives?" Ba. At this moment, Abbot Xian Ci also stood up. "Our Shaolin sect has always been open and above board. Almsgiver Song, please do not speak nonsense." At this time, Shuju also came to Xian Cheng's side to guard against Song Qing-shu's sudden attack. "Although young masters' martial arts are high, it is really inappropriate for you to rudely interfere in the internal affairs of other sections." Ba. I wonder why Benefactor Song is blocking Master Xuanqing. Ku Rong also stood on the side of the Shaolin monks. Whether it was Song Qing-shu or Jiumaji, they both wanted the Six Pulses magical sword. Now that the two of them were obviously on the same side, Ku Rong naturally did not like Song Qing-shu. "Fairy sister, it's not that I want to be your enemy on purpose, but Prince Song is in the wrong this time." Duan Yu stood by Ku Rong's side as he hurriedly explained to the girls. It was unknown whether he was speaking to Li Qiushui or Wang Yuyan. Good. Reverend Yiding did not want to get involved in these things, but Duan Yu was the crown prince of Dali. As a member of the Duan family, he naturally had the obligation to ensure his safety. At this time, Chen Jialua also came over and said, "Song Qing-shu, you have done many unjust things. We all have our own justice." Whether it was the grudge between the Red Flower Society and Song Qing-shu or the relationship between him and the Shaolin Temple, his choice was self-evident. Naturally, Yuan Zi followed him closely. She even waved at Hua Qingtong to come over. Hua Qingtong looked hesitant. She did not want to be enemies with Song Qing-shu's people, but it would be even more inappropriate for her to continue to stand on Song Qing-shu's side at this time. Therefore, she stepped aside and made it clear that she would not help either side. Yuan Shishao glanced at her and shook his head as he walked to Chen Jialua's side. Looking at Song Qing-shu, he said, "Qing said that you are a good person, but according to Zi's words and Jialua's experience, you are not a good person. Now it seems that the legendary Golden Snake King is really good at deceiving women." Hua Qingtong blushed. She wanted to explain, but she did not know what to say in front of so many people. Even Li Qinglu and the other girls felt a little uncomfortable, let alone her. Hearing him mention Qing, Song Qing-shu's attention was immediately attracted. "Where's Qing now?" Yuan Shishao sighed and said, "I don't know either. If she were here, she would not allow you to be so arrogant." As a grandmaster, Yuan Shao was frank and did not deliberately use Qing's name to scare Song Qingshu. At this time, Li Qiushui could not help but snort and said, "You all come out one by one. Do you want to bully us with numbers? What do you think of us sisters?" Heaven Mountain Tong Lao rolled her eyes and said, "Who is your sister? You are so shameless." Although she said this, she still moved closer to Song Qingshu. Although she was not happy with his enslavement, he had treated her quite well along the way. Moreover, Wu Yazi was still counting on him to save him. Jiumaji laughed a few times and said, "Since I came to the Central Plains, these so-called orthodox sects love to bully people with numbers. I did not expect them to still be so ignorant." Hearing this, Ku Rong, Xin Ci, and the others' faces heated up. Back then, Tianlong Temple fought 6 against 1, and Shaolin Temple fought 1 after another. Both seemed a little disgraceful. Jiumaji stood next to Song Qingshu and looked at Jinluan Fuwang, who was next to him. "What do you think, senior?" Both of them came from the Tibetan Tantric sect. Although they were from different sects, they still maintained the necessary etiquette on the surface. Jinluan Fuwang laughed and said, "Prince Song's kung fu is unfathomable. He does not need our help. Junior, don't worry. He and Jiumaji each belong to one of the 4 main sects of the Tibetan Tantric sect. Usually, they fought openly and secretly. Moreover, he and Song Qingshu had many conflicts. Just now, because of the Mongolian Golden Snake Camp, they both maintained a superficial peace." Jiumaji was startled. Previously, when he saw him talking happily with Song Qingshu, he thought that Song Qingshu would definitely help them. With the help of these Mongolian masters, their chances of winning were a little higher. However, he did not expect that Song Qingshu would obviously just watch the show. As expected, they are not from the same sect. They must have different intentions. And there's so many people gathered together. There must be something fun. Suddenly, a voice that could not suppress its excitement came from not far away. Everyone turned around and saw 2 white-haired old men escorting a middle-aged man towards them. One of the white-haired old men had a rectangular face, a small beard under his chin, thick hands, and big feet. His clothes were full of patches here and there, but they were clean. He held a green bamboo stick in his hand and carried a big red gourd on his back. The other old man had white hair and a youthful face. More importantly, he looked frivolous. He did not look like an old man, but more like a child. Chapter 1825. Hearing this, Tianshan Tonglao glanced at her and said, "Shut up." She saw through Li Qiushui's intention to tease her. At this time, the old man with white hair and a youthful face heard their conversation. He ran over curiously and said, "Hey, you're so young, but why do you sound so old?" Tianshan Tonglao was furious. Hearing this, she replied coldly, "Get lost." The old man with white hair and a youthful face became even more curious. He circled around her and looked at her. How strange, how strange. Being petite had always been Tianshan Tonglao's weakness. She hated people looking at her strangely. She snorted and hit the old man with her palm. She was really angry now. She used the 6th solar palm of Tianshan in this move. Ouch! The old man didn't expect her to suddenly attack him. He also didn't expect this little girl to be so skilled in kung fu. Her small palm arrived in front of him in an instant. In a hurry, he used the vacant fist to block it. After several moves, he finally dissolved the fierce force on her palm. This time he was scared. He hurriedly stepped back and put enough distance between them. But soon, his fear was replaced by curiosity. "It's fun. Let's fight again." Saying this, he was about to rush over again. "Zhou Batong, don't cause trouble." At this moment, the other old man beside him, whose entire body was covered in patches, blocked his path. There was no lack of experts at the scene, and it could be seen that the old man's casual stance was extremely brilliant. He just happened to block the path of his companion's attack and put an end to the fight. The old man was so anxious that he scratched his ears and cheeks. But his companion blocked his way. If he wanted to find a strange little girl, he couldn't fight with his companion first. Zhou Batong. Hearing this name, the people around were all shocked. The old urchin Zhou Badong was comparable to the five uniques. Such a person suddenly appearing here would have a great impact on the situation. And the old man next to him didn't look like an ordinary person. Zhou Badong and Hong Qigong. Song Qing also recognized them. They were dressed in the beggar clan's attire, and they carried a bamboo stick and a wine gourd. Who else could they be but Hong Qigong? But he didn't know how the two of them got together. Jinlun Fuwang's expression changed. When the old urchin made a scene in the Mongolian camp, they suffered a lot. He didn't expect to meet him again. This person's kung fu was so high that it was difficult to deal with him. The Shaolin monks were overjoyed. Xian Ci bowed from afar and said, "Chief Hong, the old urchin pays his respects." Shaolin had always been on good terms with the beggar clan, and they also had a good relationship with the Chuanjin sect. If they could get these two top-notch masters, why would they need to be afraid of Song Qing? Abbot, Hong Qigong smiled and bowed back. The old kid was about to salute when he suddenly saw Reverend Eating standing next to the Shaolin monks. He immediately ran out as if he had seen a ghost. "It's not fun here. I'm leaving." The old urchin was about to bow when he saw Reverend Eating standing next to the Shaolin monks. He ran away as if he had seen a ghost. "It's not fun here. I'm leaving." Fortunately, Hong Qigong was quick and grabbed him. "Old urchin, why are you running?" I, Zhou Badong stammered for a long time. His face was red, but he didn't say anything. Seeing the innocent and romantic Zhou Badong being so shy, the people around were surprised. In the distance, Reverend Eating put his palms together and sighed. Ba. Only a few people, including Song Qing, knew the whole story. When Wang Chongyang took Zhou Badong to Dali to teach Emperor Duan the Xiantian Kung Fu, Zhou Badong taught concubine Lu how to seal her acupoints. He touched her all the way to her bed. Zhou Badong felt sorry for Emperor Duan and wanted to run away as soon as he saw him. Song Qing couldn't help laughing. This was exactly the same as the blondie and the victim in the anime. "We still have business to do. Why are you running away?" Seeing that Zhou Badong couldn't say anything, Hong Qigong was a little annoyed. "Senior brother Shui, is that you?" At this time, one of Su Xinghe's disciples suddenly looked at the middle-aged man with a mustache beside them and asked. The middle-aged man took the opportunity to break free from the two, ran over, and knelt in front of Su Xinghe. "I'm Shui Muhua, your unworthy disciple. Greetings, master." Song Qing was surprised. He didn't expect that this was Shui Muhua, one of the 4 miracle-working doctors in the world. When he first came to this world, his meridians were broken, and he wanted to ask Shui Muhua to treat him. Su Xinghe looked relieved. "You're all back. Good, very good." Shui Muhua noticed the tense situation just now and couldn't help but ask, "Master, what are you doing?" Su Xinghe smiled bitterly. The disciples on the side had already told him what had just happened. In their words, Song Qing deliberately came to make trouble and destroy the relationship between them and the Shaolin Temple. Song Qing smiled. Naturally, he didn't want to argue with them. Shui Muhua rolled his eyes and shouted to the other side, "Didn't you want to ask me about Guo Jing's whereabouts? Old urchin, help me deal with Song, and I'll tell you Guo Jing's whereabouts." Everyone was shocked. It turned out that they had captured Shui Muhua to ask about Guo Jing's whereabouts. Hearing the 2 words Guo Jing, Jinlun Fuwang and the others' eyes lit up. It should be known that Guo Jing could be said to be their old enemy, and the mission this time was also somewhat related to Guo Jing. Song Qing secretly thought, could it be that Princess Huajing took Guo Jing to Shui Muhua for treatment? I wonder how the treatment is going. Suddenly, he heard Zhou Badong shout, "Okay, since Song Qing is Emperor Duan's enemy, I'll help him vent his anger." He had just heard the situation from the deaf and mute sect and knew that Reverend Eating was on the side of the Shaolin Temple and almost fought with Song Qing. He felt guilty, so he planned to help Reverend Eating vent his anger and make up for what he owed him. As soon as he finished speaking, he had already arrived in front of Song Qing. There were many masters around, but they were somewhat shocked. What's with Zhou Buotong's body movement just now? Why can't I see it clearly? Only Song Qing knew what was going on. With the Nine Sutra and the bug move, Zhou Badong was now in fact the number one of the 5 masters. Except for Wang Chongyang, who had faked his death if they really fought, the Eastern Heretic, Western Poison, Southern Emperor, and Northern Beggar were no match for him at all. But Song Qingshu was so powerful that although his opponent's body movement was fast, he was not too surprised. He reached out and blocked the opponent's attack. Chapter 1826. It was a rare opportunity for experts to exchange blows with each other. The surrounding experts all stared at the scene with wide eyes. Jinluan Fuwang sighed to himself. No wonder Zhou Badong was able to enter the Mongolian camp like there was no one there. His power is really terrifying. But now that I've mastered the dragon elephant Prajna, I don't know who will win if I fight him. However, his eyes suddenly widened. He saw Song Qingshu stretch out his palm and push Zhou Badong 10 feet away. It was as if the fish shadows that filled the sky just now did not exist. What is this move? The proud dragon's remorse? Or the Wudong's soft palm? Or the demon's subduing fist? Jinluan Fuwang had fought with Song Qingshu a few times, and he had also seen Mongolian masters fight with him. He had a good understanding of Song Qingshu's martial arts, but this time he was really confused. What kind of palm was this? He couldn't tell at all. It looked like a normal person's push. But how could it be a normal push against Zhou Badong's left and right hands? Jinluan Fuwang's power was high enough, but he was lacking in techniques. He couldn't tell for a moment. But Tian Shan, Tong Lao had a strange look on her face. I didn't expect him to have reached this level, turning complicated into simple. It's not a shame to lose to him. Jiumaji could not help but smile bitterly. He came to the Central Plains full of confidence. Even though he had made a name for himself, compared to Song Qingshu, he was still far behind. At first, he thought of comparing, but now he didn't even have that thought anymore. The Happy Diana is really amazing. Should I learn it as well? Jiumaji thought that it was because of the Happy Diana that Song Qingshu's martial arts improved so much. But when he thought of the past generations of Tantra Buddhism, there was no lack of talented people who could survive the final disaster. He gave up on the idea. He looked at Song Qingshu worriedly, not knowing when something would happen to him. Was that a move from the Wudong sect or the Amei sect? Wang Yuyan's confused voice sounded from the side. Her brows were tightly furrowed, as if she couldn't understand what had just happened. Miss Wang, Duan Yu stared intently at Wang Yuyan from afar. Because Li Qiushui's face was obscured, he could only stare at Wang Yuyan. Noticing the doubt in her eyes, he wanted to explain, but he had only learned a few top-tier martial arts through sheer coincidence. His knowledge of martial arts was even lower than that of the average person in the pugilistic world, so there was no way he could tell what was going on. Li Qiushui spoke at this time. Silly child, when one's martial arts reach the pinnacle, every move is done according to one's desires. How can there be any specific moves? Just like this heavenly mountain Tong Lao, it is said that she doesn't need 2 moves to kill. Every time, she kills with 1 move. Who could say the name of that move? Also, I heard that Wudong Zhenrezhang used a single move to subdue the Xianming elders. Who knows the name of that move? Heavenly Mountain Tong Lao snorted. You don't have to flatter me. If it was 30 years ago, of course I wouldn't be afraid of Zhang Sanfeng, but now. She was silent for a long time, and finally shook her head. He is a genius, and created his own Tai Chi sword, but I can only practice the martial arts of my predecessors, so I'm probably not his match. Li Qiushui also let out a sigh. Her martial arts skills were even weaker than Tian Shan Tong Lao's, so naturally, she was no match for Zhang Sanfeng. However, her interest in this life was not entirely in martial arts, so she very quickly collected her emotions. Glancing at the few monks not too far away, she laughed mockingly and said, "Only those who are a class lower-level martial artists. Every single move of theirs is not some Shaolin 72 ultimate arts, but some solitary yang finger. They shout out their moves all over the sky, as if they are afraid that others do not know how famous their martial arts are." Wang Yuyan nodded, not fully understanding. I see. Hearing this, Jiumaji couldn't help but blush. Even though he knew that Wang Yuyan was mocking the Shaolin Temple and the Duan family of Dali, He also seemed to like showing off every time he made a move. Only now did he realize that he was at a disadvantage. The Shaolin monk's expressions changed several times. Who on earth is this girl? She looks so beautiful and delicate, but her martial arts knowledge is so extraordinary. Reverend Eating also couldn't help but put his palms together. You're right, madam. Li Qiushui giggled. Old monk, you have good mind. Zhou Batong, who was in the middle of the fight, felt a little embarrassed. He originally wanted to help Reverend Eating and make up for what he owed him, but he didn't expect that he would not only fail, but also lose so much face. In fact, he was a naughty child, so he didn't think about losing face at all. However, this was only for other people, but in front of Reverend Eating, he was much more sensitive. This time, he didn't dare to hold back anymore. He continued to fight with both hands, one with a vacant fist and the other with the demon's subduing fist. Because he had sworn in front of his senior brother Wang Chongyang, he had always avoided using the martial arts from the 9E manual. But now, he couldn't care less, so he directly used the martial arts from the 9E manual. Everyone only saw a blur in front of their eyes. Just a moment ago, the sky was filled with fists, but now it was as if there were two Zhou Batong, one on the left and one on the right, attacking Song Qingshu. At the same time, the two Zhou Batong's martial arts were completely different. One was as kind as water, the other was treacherous and ruthless. Even Jiu Maji, Xian Cheng, and the others were shocked, not to mention Jinlu and Fuang. They wondered how they would deal with such an attack if they were in Song Qingshu's place. Li Qiushui was also amazed. She poked Tianshan Tonglao next to her and said, I didn't expect this guy to be so good. Even you might not be able to win against this old naughty boy. Tianshan Tonglao snorted. In a fight of life and death, the outcome is uncertain. At the same time, she was shocked. She had lived on Tianshan for a long time, but she didn't expect the Wulin world of the Central Plains to have developed to such an extent. At this time, Xian Ci quietly said to Xian Cheng, let's not waste time. Xian Cheng nodded. He walked to the side of the cabin and was about to push the boulder away. Suddenly, a strand of sword chi shot over. The boulder was broken into pieces, and Xian Cheng had to stop. Did I let you in? Song Qingshu said calmly. Everyone thought that he would be flustered by the two Zhou Batong's attack. They didn't expect that he still had the energy to attack the Shaolin Temple and talk. His martial arts were unfathomable. Ku Rong couldn't help but say, this sword chi seems to be no weaker than the Six Pulses magic sword. Reverend Eating nodded. Indeed, but the way to circulate energy is different. Umitba, we'll bear with it. Almsgiver Song, don't go too far. As soon as Xian Ci finished speaking, she waved her sleeve and used the Kasaya exorcism Kung Fu to roll up the boulder that was blocking the door and throw it at Song Qingshu. At the same time, she said to Xian Cheng, get in. Xiuzhu, come and protect him. Song Qingshu's expression changed. The boulder that was coming at him seemed to be cut by an invisible sword chi. It suddenly broke into several large pieces and dust. At the same time, several strands of sword chi shot toward the door of the cabin. Chapter 1827. The finger wind and the sword chi soon disappeared. Master Yidong put his palms together and said, Mr. Song, this is an internal matter between the Shaolin Temple and the deaf and mute sect, after all. We should forgive and forget. Song Qingshu raised his eyebrows. He had to deal with Zhou Batong, who was attacking with all his might, and Xian Si Stone, so the sword chi that he released was naturally weaker. Besides, Master Eating's sun finger was unparalleled in the world, so it was normal that it was difficult for him to dissolve it. Nonetheless, seeing as Xian Cheng had entered the house, he was no longer in the mood to argue with him. He flashed and appeared at the entrance of the cave. Xian Ci and Xiuzhu were already waiting there. Upon seeing him, they performed their greatest techniques to attack him. Song Qingshu was troubled too. Whether it was Xian Ci or Xiuzhu, they were top-notch experts in the world. Since they were guarding the narrow entrance, he would not be able to get through it in a short time. Feeling helpless, he could only stretch his arms and grab their arms while they were attacking. He pulled them to the center of the field and revealed the entrance of the cave. Umitba, Master Kurong was friends with the monks from the Shaolin Temple and was good friends with Wu Yazi. He was rather displeased to see the young monk messing up the exquisite chess game. Seeing as Xian Ci and Shuju's arms were grabbed, he was worried that they would be in danger, so he quickly performed the sun finger to point at Song Qingshu. Song Qingshu's face darkened. Many people did not even see how he made the move. They only saw Master Kurong grunting and leaving the battlefield. Master Eating had just experienced how great Song Qingshu's martial arts skill was. He was worried that something would happen to Kurong, so he quickly went to protect him. Nevertheless, he was kind-hearted, so he did not attack Song Qingshu at the moment. He only used his moves to defend against Kurong. Song Qingshu naturally did not have the time to deal with the Duan family. However, he could not be distracted by these masters, so he said to Tianshan, Tong Lao, and Li Qiusha, "Why are you two still watching the show? The person you want to see is inside. If you are late, don't blame me for not warning you if something happens." Initially, Heaven Mountain Tong Lao and Li Qiushui were watching from the side as if they were watching a show. They were not good people to begin with, and their relationship with Song Qingshu was only temporary. Especially Heaven Mountain Tong Lao. She was still holding a grudge against Song Qingshu for being poisoned by him. She could not wait for more top masters to surround and attack him, so that she could observe his martial arts from the side and see if there were any flaws. However, upon hearing his words, the two of them instantly lost their composure. Wu Yazi. The thought flashed across their minds, and they hurriedly rushed towards the wooden house. At that moment, it was Yuan Shixiao, Chan Jiaoa, and the others blocking the entrance of the cave. They were on good terms with Shaolin, so they planned to help Shaolin so that they would owe them a favor. "Go away!" Heaven Mountain Tong Lao shouted angrily, and the 6 solar palms of Tianshan suddenly burst out. Yuan Shixiao's expression changed, and he hurriedly pushed Chan Jiaoa aside and raised his palm to block the attack. Soon, his face turned red, and he took 2 steps back to steady himself. After all, he was the top master in the border region. Although he was not as good as Heaven Mountain Tong Lao, it was not easy for his opponent to defeat him. On the other side, Li Qiushui was fighting against Yuan Zi and Chan Jiaoa. Although the two of them were good among the young people, they were no match for Li Qiushui. Li Qiushui waved her sleeves and directly used the white and red palm force. The two of them were hit by an internal force that came from the side, and their bodies were sore and numb. Seizing this opportunity, the other party used the wave-like subtle steps to sneak into the wooden house. Seeing that her rival had entered the house before her, Heaven Mountain Tong Lao was even more furious, and her attack became more vicious. Yuan Shixiao was in danger instantly. If he did not have the wooden house behind him, which could save him half of his energy in defense, he would have died on the spot. Seeing that their master was in danger, Chan Jiaoa and Yuan Zi did not care about chasing after Li Qiushui and hurriedly came to help. Only then did the pressure on Yuan Shixiao lessen. This is interesting. A group of people are rushing into the wooden house. Could there be some treasure inside? On the Mongolian side, Inkashi laughed and also rushed over. Xiaoxiang Zi, Nimixing, and the others did not want to be left behind. Even Jinluan Fuwang was a little tempted. After all, these people were the best of the best. Since they were rushing in with all their might, it meant that there must be something precious inside. Su Xinghe and the others' expressions changed greatly, and they hurriedly went up to them. Many of his disciples also helped. Unfortunately, Su Xinghe's martial arts were about the same as Inkashi's, and his disciples were much weaker. Soon, the people of the deaf and mute sect were scattered all over the place. Jiu Maji chuckled. "How can I miss such a lively event? Brother Song, let me help you into the house." After saying this, he rushed toward the wooden house. He was just as curious as Jinluan Fuwang. "Jiumaji, don't hurt them." Seeing that Jiumaji was about to pass by Reverend Yidong and Zen Master Kurong, Duan Yu became anxious. Fearing that Jiumaji would suddenly attack him, Duan Yu launched the 6 Pulses legendary sword. Originally, Duan Yu's 6 Pulses legendary sword was not always effective, so it was difficult for him to use it as he pleased. However, he had been captured by Geomaji and had always been afraid of him, so he naturally raised his guard. Now that he was worried that the elders of his clan might be in danger, he launched the Six Pulses legendary sword in a moment of desperation. Geomaji was startled. While dodging the sword chi, he said angrily, "Duan brat, when I get my hands on you, I'll burn you in front of Elder Murong's grave." Duan Yu was scared when he was used as a living sword manual by Geomaji and was almost burned in front of the Murong clan's grave. Now that he was traumatized, he did not dare to be careless. The Six Pulses legendary sword shot out like a machine gun, and Geomaji was in a difficult situation. At this moment, Song Qingshu's voice came. "Wisdom King, he hasn't mastered the Six Pulses legendary sword, and there's a big problem with the connection of the six sword arts. You can subdue him if you find a gap." Geomaji was startled. He carefully looked at it and found that it was indeed as Murongbo had said. He felt ashamed in his heart. When he was young, he had heard Murongbo praise the six-pulse divine sword. Unconsciously, he had thought of the six-pulse divine sword as a myth. His first reaction was to avoid it, but now that he thought about it, the six-pulse divine sword might not be able to defeat his flame blade. He made up his mind and stopped dodging. Instead, he found a gap and approached Duan Yu. Seeing that his opponent was getting closer, Duan Yu couldn't help but panic. His sword art was full of flaws. Reverend Eating saw what was happening from the corner of his eyes. He couldn't help but say, "Use only one sword art. Don't switch between six." As one of the five masters, he had a unique insight. He saw the problem at first glance and found a way to deal with it. Duan Yu stopped switching between the Shaozi sword and the Shangyang sword. From the beginning to the end, he only used one sword art. In this way, there were no gaps. Geomaji tried several times, but he couldn't get closer. It really works. Duan Yu was happy, but his distraction made the Six Pulses legendary sword in his hand stop for a moment. Geomaji immediately took advantage of this gap and rushed forward, grabbing Duan Yu's shoulder. Chapter 1828. Just as he was about to grab Duan Yu, a fist suddenly landed on his shoulder. Geomaji felt as if he had punched a ball of cotton. Startled, he hurriedly dodged to the side and saw an old man with white hair and a youthful face standing next to Duan Yu. It was Zhou Badong. "What's the big deal about bullying the younger generation? Fight me if you can." At this moment, Zhou Badong was also feeling gloomy. He had just suffered quite a bit at Song Qingshu's hands, but now that there were several experts surrounding them, he couldn't bring himself to fight them with numbers. Coincidentally, he saw the situation over here, so he made a move to save Duan Yu. "Thank you for saving me, Senior." Duan Yu hurriedly thanked him. "You're welcome. Anyway, I owe the Duan family a favor." Zhou Badong waved his hand and did not want to talk to him. He directly jumped over and started fighting with Geomaji. Glancing at the situation over there, Song Qingshu's face darkened. Looking at those who had been clinging to him, he said, "In that case, don't blame me for being ruthless." Feeling the wind gathering around them, Xian Ci and Shuju's expressions changed. They had experienced the destructive sword chi of this man before. At that time, all the masters of Shaolin Temple had almost died in his hands, let alone the two of them. The two hurriedly jumped out of the fighting circle and used their unique skills to protect themselves. But this made things difficult for Reverend Eating. He had been supporting them, but now he had to face Song Qingshu head-on. Feeling an unprecedented crisis, Reverend Eating did not dare to be careless. He used the Xiantian skill and Yang finger to poke at the scattered sword chi around him. "Watch out!" Hong Qigong, who had been watching from the side, secretly sighed that the new generation really surpassed the old. This young man's martial arts were really incredible. Suddenly, he realized that Reverend Eating was in danger, so he hurriedly used the 18 dragon-subduing palms. A vague dragon-shaped palm force rushed at Reverend Eating with an extremely fierce power, shattering the sword chi that was attacking him. Song Qingshu slightly withdrew his hand. "Today's matter has nothing to do with you. Please stand aside and watch." Reverend Eating was a kind man, but he was used because he didn't know what was going on. Moreover, Wang Chongyang had taught him the sun finger, so he owed Reverend Eating a favor. Naturally, he wouldn't hurt Reverend Eating. As for Hong Qigong, he was Huang Rong's master. If anything happened to him, how could he face her in the future? Looking at the time, she should have given birth. I wonder if it's twins like in the original novel. Song Qing-shu was lost in thought for a moment. Hong Qigong and Reverend Eating looked at each other and saw the dilemma in each other's eyes. This man's kung fu was really unfathomable, and they didn't know what would happen if they really fought with him. Besides, they didn't have any reason to fight. But they were one of the 5 greats of the Central Plains. If they retreated because of a young man's words, their reputation would be ruined in Jianghu. While they were hesitating, their expressions suddenly changed, and they shouted at the same time, "Watch out!" At this moment, Song Qing-shu was pondering whether Huang Rongsheng was alive or not. Suddenly, he felt a sense of foreboding. In a flash, he had already used so close, yet worlds apart, and moved 3 feet to the side. A black shadow appeared at the place where he had just been standing, and his fist struck empty air. Visible ripples appeared in the air. If he had been hit, even with Song Qing-shu's cultivation, he would have been seriously injured. Song Qing-shu's face turned cold. As soon as he moved 3 feet to the side, a sharp sword chi shot toward the man. In an instant, the man had no way to dodge. In the distance, Xian Ci and Shuju's hearts skipped a beat. They had seen this move before, and it was this move that had wiped out all the masters of the Shaolin Temple. But they soon realized that this move was launched in a hurry, and its power and range were much smaller than last time. After missing his attack, he was immediately faced with a sky full of sword chi. The Black Shadow was obviously also shocked. He hurriedly used his hands to block in front of his body with extremely mysterious hand seals. The surrounding people couldn't even see his hand movements clearly. All they could see was a black vortex forming in front of him, gradually melting the sky full of sword chi. What? Song Qing-shu was stunned. When he was about to continue, a pale yellow figure suddenly jumped into the field. "Stop fighting." Hua Qingtong stood between the two, looking at them anxiously. "Our common enemy is the Mongolians. You're hurting your friends and making the enemy happy." "You're friends with him?" Song Qing-shu asked with a faint smile. But since Hua Qingtong was standing between them, he couldn't do anything. "Miss Hua, why are you here?" The Black Shadow spoke. Just now, he was surrounded by a black mist, so everyone could see his face clearly. The sect master of the Ming dynasty, Zhang Wuji. There was no lack of people who had seen him before, especially the people of the Shaolin Temple. Xian Ci and Shuju looked at each other and communicated with each other through secret voice sending. Zhang Wuji looks a little strange. Yes, he used to be as gentle as jade. Maybe it's because he cultivated the 9 yang divine art that he had a warm and comfortable feeling, but now his whole body is gloomy and treacherous, and his temperament is completely different. I heard that Zhou Zhiruo and Zhao Min both followed Song. Could it be that this blow caused his temperament to change? It's possible, but it's good that a big enemy has come, so Song has no time to ruin our plan. At this time, Hua Qingtong replied, "I came to the Central Plains to persuade various countries, and I met Prince Song on the way, so I planned to persuade him first." Before she finished speaking, Zhang Wuji frowned and interrupted, "Have you been with him all this time?" Hua Qingtong's face turned pale. Only now did she realize the grudge between the two, especially after what happened to Zhou Zhiruo and Zhao Min. As his fiancée, she really shouldn't be so close to another man. But she quickly raised her head and said, "Yes, I think that the Golden Snake Camp is the key to the success of the alliance in the Central Plains, so I try to persuade him." She was not the kind of woman who fought for favor in the harem. She had great love in her heart, and she carried the future of the entire border on her shoulders. Naturally, she wouldn't let some romantic feelings affect her official business. Song Qing-shu had a faint smile on his face. In the original work, Hua Qingtong was also this arrogant. She and Chun Jiluo were in love, but unfortunately, they met Li Yuanji, who was disguised as a man. Hua Qingtong knew that Li Yuanji was a girl, but Chun Jiluo didn't know. Although Hua Qingtong knew that Chen Jiaohua didn't know, she was unwilling to explain. She thought that the most important thing in a relationship was to be intimate. If you don't believe me, it's useless to say anything. If you believe me, I don't have to say anything. Unfortunately, Chen Jiaohua misunderstood her and fell in love with Princess Xiangxiang. With this kind of temperament, if he wants to poach someone, he'll definitely succeed. Looking at the beautiful figure, Song Qingshu suddenly thought. Zhang Wuji snorted and said, I wonder how your lobbying is going? Hua Qingtong glanced at Song Qingshu, and a hint of annoyance appeared between her brows. Prince Song is very cunning. He hasn't agreed to any substantial conditions. Chapter 1829. Hearing that, Hua Qingtong blushed. She was about to say that it wasn't what he thought, but then she realized that there was no need for her to explain. She stood there, not knowing what to say. A double loss? Song Qingshu looked Zhang Wuji up and down. That's a good suggestion. Hua Qingtong couldn't help but stamp her feet and glare at him. Prince Song, Zhang Wuji snorted, obviously dissatisfied. I have something else to do today. I'll deal with you later. Then he walked to where the school of the deaf and dumb was. Song Qingshu smiled. They were enemies, but they had a tacit understanding. Song Qingshu still needed Zhang Wuji to fight the Mongolians, so he wouldn't fight him to the death. Seeing that Zhang Wuji had left, Song Qingshu cupped his hands to Hong Qigong and Reverend Eating. Thank you for reminding me just now. Thinking that Zhang Wuji would never let go of any chance to kill him, Song Qingshu suddenly felt unhappy. But on the other hand, he still needed Zhang Wuji to fight the Mongolians in the western regions, and he couldn't kill him. Suddenly, his eyes fell on Hua Qingtong's tall and graceful figure. Song Qingshu seemed to think of something, and his depressed mood instantly improved. Hong Qigong waved his hand and said, Your kung fu is very good. You could have dodged it even if I didn't remind you. He was a straightforward man and didn't want to accept credit that didn't exist. At the same time, he wondered what kind of move Zhang Wuji had used to suddenly disappear and then reappear 3 feet away. Reverend Eating was thinking about another question. What was that black vortex in front of Zhang Jiaozhu just now? Was it the heaven and earth grand shift? Song Qingshu explained, it was indeed the heaven and earth grand shift, and it was mixed with the absorbing stars grand shift, so it could dissolve my sword qi to a certain extent. When Zhang Wuji fought with Ah Qing, he was injured by her innate sword qi. The innate sword qi had been entangled in his meridians. Left with no choice, he ran to the Blackwood Cliff to obtain the great absorbing star technique to dissolve all the inner energy in his body. He also got rid of the innate sword qi along the way. Looking at his appearance now, it was unknown how many masters' internal forces had been absorbed by him with the absorbing star's great skill. His martial arts were no less than when he was at his peak. Moreover, because of the absorbing star's great skills property of dissolving Jin Qi, he could even dissolve sword qi now, which was really a headache. However, there were no absolutes in the world. Just like how Taiji Fist used softness to overcome hardness. If the hardness exceeded a certain range, softness would be useless. It was the same for him when he melted the sword qi. He could only melt a portion of it. Star-absorbing grand technique? Reverend Eating was surprised. Apparently, he didn't expect that Zhang Wuji would learn the kung fu of the devil cult. But on second thought, he realized that the Ming dynasty was the devil cult in everyone's eyes, so it was not surprising at all. By the way, why did gang leader Hong appear here this time? Song Qingshu finally found a chance to ask. The 2 masters of the 5 ultimates had not let go of Xuan Muhua. Song Qingshu seemed to have heard them mention Guijing just now. Rong and Huang Yaosher found me a while ago and asked me to help them find Guo Jing's whereabouts. Rong was about to give birth, and Huang Yaosher had to stay on the island to take care of her. Therefore, he asked me and the old kid to find out about Guo Jing's whereabouts. We received news that someone brought Guo Jing to Miracle Dr. Xue for treatment, so we came together to ask. Who knew that Miracle Dr. Xue wouldn't tell us anything? He said that it was an urgent matter and insisted that we come with him to Mount Drum Beating Mountain in Songzhou. Hearing his answer, Song Qingshu thought of what Jinlu and Fuwang had said before. It seemed that Huazheng had brought Guijing to Xuanmuhua for treatment, but the news had leaked out. The Mongolians had come to Huazheng, and Hong Qigong and Zhou Badong had come to find Guijing. Suddenly, joy appeared on his face as he asked, "Rong, did Madame Wu give birth to a boy or a girl?" Hong Qigong looked at him in surprise, wondering why he was so happy about the birth of a child. However, he still answered, "She gave birth to a pair of twins. The daughter was named Guixiang, and the son was named Guopolu." The world's plot's ability to correct errors was really strong. Guixiang and Guopolu were stillborn. Thinking about their surnames, Song Qingshu suddenly smiled bitterly. What was so surprising about it? If her child's surname wasn't Guo, what else could it be? He couldn't help but think about Guijing. He didn't know how his injuries were, but the key person was Miracle Dr. Shui. Song Qingshu looked at the scene and saw that Jinlu and Fuwang and the others were already fighting with Zhang Wuji. Voices from both sides could be heard from time to time. You could have taken the road to heaven, but you chose to barge into hell. If you had stayed at Guangming Peak, we really wouldn't have been able to do anything to you. However, you came here alone. We can take your head to His Highness to ask for a reward. Shameless boasting. What can you do to me with just a few people? Zhang Wuji flipped and jumped among the few of them. Even though he was 1 against 4, he didn't seem to be at a disadvantage. As for Huidou, he was severely injured by Zhang Wuji the moment they met and had long since retreated from the battle. Song Qingshu nodded silently. In the original novel, Jinlu and Fuwang, Nimixing, Xiaoxiang Zi, and Inkashi almost surrounded and killed Guijing. Even though Zhang Wuji's martial arts were high, Jinlu and Fuwang had already mastered the dragon elephant prajna art. The pressure he faced was even greater than Guijing's. Both sides were evenly matched. Looking into the wooden house, faint sounds of fighting could be heard. It seemed like Li Qiushui and Xiancheng were fighting. If Xiancheng was at his peak, Xiancheng would be a little worried. However, Xiancheng's meridians were broken by Xiancheng. Even though he was saved, how could he recover his previous strength so easily? Naturally, he didn't have to worry about Li Qiushui. Thus, his figure flashed and came to Xuanmuhua's side. Miracle Dr. Shui, how is Hero Wu now? Xuanmuhua saw that her sect was fighting with him. She snorted and turned her head away. Obviously, she didn't want to tell him. Song Qingshu furrowed his brows. Just as he was about to make another plan, a delicate cry suddenly came from the wooden house. His expression couldn't help but change. He could tell that it was Li Qiushui's voice. Could it be that something had happened to her inside? Who could hurt her? He didn't have time to think too much. He let go of Xuanmuhua and rushed into the wooden house. Yuan Shi Xiao and his 2 disciples were already having a hard time dealing with Tianshan Tonglao. When they saw him coming, they couldn't help but secretly complain. Fortunately, Xian Ci, Su Zhu, and the others rushed over to help. It was a pity that Song Qingshu's feet were fast enough. He also used the wave-like subtle steps and flashed into the house. Seeing him use the wave-like subtle steps, Tianshan Tonglao said angrily, "I've long seen you flirting with each other. So that bitch taught you her life-saving martial arts." Her attacks intensified. Yuan Shi Xiao and the others couldn't hold on anymore. They were all injured and scattered to the side. Tianshan Tonglao also rushed in. Chapter 1830. Zhang Wuji, don't even think about running away. Jinlu and Fuwang roared and chased after him. He had mastered the dragon elephant prajna technique and was more confident than ever. He was just about to show off his skills when Zhang Wuji came to him. How could he let him go? Xiaoxiang Zi, Nimixing, and the others looked at each other and hurriedly followed. It should be known that the Ming cult led by Zhang Wuji was a huge headache for the Khan. If they could kill him when he was alone, the Khan would at least bestow a title of 10,000 household, which was much better than the empty title of First Warrior of Mongolia. Seeing that Xuanmuhua was taken away by Zhang Wuji, Hong Qigong didn't have time to care about what was going on here. He shouted and chased after them. These people were all highly skilled. He wasn't sure if he could win against Zhang Wuji or Jinlu and Fuwang, so he called Zhou Batong. Zhou Badong heard the call and jumped out of the fighting circle. He said to Zhou Maji, "Let's stop fighting. I have something to do today. We'll fight next time." Zhou Maji couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. It was a headache to deal with them when they were fighting each other. It was good to stop now. Who knew that after a few steps, Zhou Badong would suddenly turn around and say to him, "By the way, Big Monk, your fire-emitting kung fu looks fun. Can you teach me?" Zhou Maji was speechless. It took him a while to realize that the fire-emitting kung fu was referring to the flaming blade. Just as he was getting angry, Hong Qigong's shouts became more urgent. Zhou Badong said to him helplessly, "I can't teach you today. Teach me next time." Zhou Maji didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He thought, "When did I promise to teach you?" Not far away, Hu Qingtong was sad. Zhang Wuji was her fiancée after all, but he didn't seem to notice her when he left. Or was she not important in his heart? At this moment, Zhang Wuji was speeding along with Xue Muhua. After a few twists and turns, the pursuers were nowhere to be seen. Xue Muhua couldn't help but exclaim in admiration, "Zhang Jiaozhu's lightness skill is truly a gift from the heavens. Even if you're carrying one person, the other top experts won't be able to catch up to you." Zhang Wuji said faintly, "I just used the complicated terrain to temporarily shake them off. It won't be long before they catch up." Seeing that the other party didn't fall for his flattery, Xue Muhua smiled awkwardly and said, "I wonder why Zhang Jiaozhu asked me to come here." He used the word find rather than grab, because he was afraid of provoking the other party. Zhang Wuji glanced at him and asked directly, "Do you know the Dark North Divine Art?" "Dark North Divine Art?" Xue Muhua's heart skipped a beat, and she hurriedly covered it up. "No, I've never heard of it. As far as I know, this is the special skill of your grandmaster, Wu Yazi," Zhang Wuji said as he stared at him quietly. "When we entered the sect, we didn't even see the grandmaster. Master was also very secretive about it." Xue Muhua paused before continuing. "Later on, my medical skills became slightly famous in the martial arts world. Gradually, I heard some news that the Grandmaster was plotted against by Uncle Master Ding Chuanxiu and died from falling off a cliff." Zhang Wuji nodded slightly. This was roughly the same as his investigation. What about Wu Yazi's ultimate skill, the Dark North Divine Art? Although he's dead, his martial arts should have been passed down. Xue Muhua hurriedly said, "After Ding Chunxiu plotted against the Grandmaster, he dug 3 feet into the ground to look for the sect's secret manual. Unfortunately, he didn't find it, and Master didn't learn it either." Zhang Wuji thought about it. When he observed Su Xing's fight just now, he indeed didn't know the Dark North Divine Art. Instead, it seemed like that kid with the surname Duan. Noticing Xue Muhua's gaze, he collected his thoughts and continued, "I came to find Miracle Dr. Xue this time because I have a request." "Zhang Jiaozhu, you're exaggerating. If there's anything I can help with, I won't hesitate." Although Xue Muhua was usually a little arrogant, it also depended on the situation. Facing the leader of the devil cult alone, how could he not know the situation? "You should have heard of the Absorbing Star's great technique, right?" Zhang Wuji asked. Xue Muhua nodded. "Of course I've heard of it. Absorbing people's internal energy for their own use is the most notorious of the devil cult." He suddenly noticed that the other party's gaze was a little ugly, and a strong desire to live made him immediately change his tone. "But good and evil don't lie in the martial arts, but in the people who use the martial arts. Moreover, the Absorbing Star's great technique is extremely unique. It can transform other people's internal energy into one's own. It's worthy of being the Sun-Moon cult's treasure." Only then did Zhang Wuji say, "Actually, I've also practiced this martial arts. It was fine at first, but as I absorbed the internal energy of dozens of Mongolian masters, one day I suddenly felt that the internal energy in my body was in a mess, and there were signs of it gradually losing control." "Mr. Xue, as one of the Jianghu's 4 great doctors, do you have a solution?" Xue Muhua secretly curled his lips. Thinking that the martial arts of the evil sects were indeed evil sects, there would always be all kinds of serious side effects. How could it be as neutral and peaceful as the Dark North Divine Art of his own sect? Suddenly, He thought of something and asked with some doubt. Zhang Jiaozhu has received the true teachings of the butterfly bone fairy doctor, Hu Qingyou. Could it be that there is no solution? Hu Qingyou is also one of the 4 great doctors, and his reputation is even higher than his. How could his true disciple find me? Zhang Wuji answered. I want to brainstorm and see if Mr. Shui has any solution. Shui Muhua's heart trembled. It seemed that this symptom was very difficult to solve, so he had no choice but to say, Can I feel your pulse for you? Zhang Wuji nodded and placed his wrist in front of him. Shui Muhua touched it lightly and closed his eyes to feel it. After a long time, he opened his eyes and said, Zhang Jiaozhu, the star-sucking great skill is obviously flawed. If you continue to practice it, the foreign internal energy will conflict with each other, and I'm afraid it will be difficult for you to suppress it. At that time, it will be inevitable that your body will explode and you will die. The only solution now is to disperse the internal energy you have absorbed. Only then will you have a chance of survival. Zhang Wuji snorted and said, If I disperse the internal energy, do I still need to find you? I'm ashamed that my medical skills are limited, and I really can't do anything. Shui Muhua thought in his heart, no wonder he wants to find the whereabouts of the northern underworld divine skill. He must want to learn how to improve the star-sucking great skill from it. Suddenly, he thought of something and couldn't help saying, By the way, Zhang Jiaozhu, when I felt your pulse just now, I seemed to feel that the yin and yang qi in your body is a little out of balance. Oh. Zhang Wuji's expression changed. What effect? Shui Muhua hesitated for a while, as if he was thinking about how to phrase it. If the situation is allowed to worsen in the future, it may affect the birth of children. Zhang Wuji's face darkened. Of course, he could hear the implied meaning of the other party. Not being able to have sex would naturally affect children. In fact, this symptom was more serious than what he had described. As the founder of the sect of Flame, no matter in his previous life or this life, he loved pure and flawless virgins the most. However, in recent months, he found little girls, but he couldn't enjoy their fresh and tender bodies, and he couldn't find a reason. He didn't expect that there was a problem with the yin and yang qi. Chapter 1831. Shui Muhua pondered for a long time before asking, Did you suffer any serious injuries before? Zhang Wuji nodded. Yes, I was injured by the innate sword qi. The innate sword qi was entangled in my meridians, and it was difficult to get rid of it. Later, I used the star-sucking great technique to get rid of it. This was related to his lifelong happiness, so he did not dare to hide it in front of the doctor. No wonder. Shui Muhua touched the mustache at the corner of his mouth. It was most likely caused by the innate sword qi. Although he was called a miracle doctor, he was not a real god. How could he know that the real reason was that the star-sucking great technique had been added to it? Is there a way to cure it? Zhang Wuji hurriedly asked. At the same time, he was secretly hating that green-clothed girl. He did not know where she came from, but her sword qi was too terrifying. Now, she even left such a serious after-effect. Shui Muhua looked embarrassed. I am not knowledgeable and have never seen the innate sword qi. Naturally, I don't know how to cure it. At this time, Zhang Wuji's heart was full of negative emotions. He could not help but snort. You can't cure this, and you can't cure that. How can you be called one of the 4 miracle doctors of Wulin? At other times, Shui Muhua would sail with the wind, but when it came to medical skills that he was most proud of, he was very arrogant. He could not help but reply. Zhang Jiaozhu is also one of the 4 miracle doctors of Wulin, but he can't cure my illness. Although Hu Qingyou was recognized as one of the 4 miracle doctors, Zhang Wuji had received the teachings of Hu Qingyou and Wang Nanggu. His medical skills could be said to be better than his father's, so it was not inappropriate for him to be listed as one of the 4 miracle doctors. Zhang Wuji's face was gloomy. He had successfully taken over the body. Although he had inherited the original owner's skills, medical skills were the deepest memories. How could he know them? However, it was not convenient for others to know the reason. He did not want to continue this topic, so he changed the topic. I just heard that Guo Jing came to you for treatment. He was half dead. How could he have the ability to come to me for treatment? It was a woman who brought him here. At this moment, Xuemuhua was also a little scared. He was too impulsive just now. He actually confronted the other party head-on. Now that the other party changed the topic, he naturally had to take advantage of the situation. I'd already wasted a lot of time here. If I delayed a little longer, the people chasing after me would catch up. At that time, Zhang Wuji wouldn't be able to take care of me. Woman? Zhang Wuji frowned. Then why did the Mongolians want to capture you? It's because of that woman, Xuemuhua explained. That woman is the daughter of the Mongolian Khan, Princess Huajing. At that time, Guijing was injured all over and in a semi-conscious state. It was Princess Huajing who brought him here to seek medical attention. It was rumored that Guijing had died on the battlefield of the Southern Song Dynasty's northern expedition. Unexpectedly, he was saved by a Mongolian woman in the end. Huajing. Zhang Wuji was deep in thought. She is a Mongolian Khan's most beloved daughter. No wonder Jinluan Fuwang and the others are chasing after you. People say that Hero Gua and Chief Huang are a match made in heaven. But I see that Princess Huajing is also deeply in love with Guijing. She would sit by the bed and cry from time to time. That expression can't be faked. Xuemuhua suddenly laughed. If you ask me, I think Hero Gua should marry Huajing and continue to be the Mongolian emperor's son-in-law. Then Mongolia and the Song dynasty will be on good terms for 100 years. Isn't that much better than him guarding Xiangyang? Hearing his words, Zhang Wuji's expression changed. He seemed to have thought of an idea. He then asked, "Have you treated Guijing's injuries?" A trace of pride flashed across Xuemuhua's face. When Guijing came, he was on the verge of death. There were hundreds of stab wounds on his body. But this was not a problem for me. I tried my best to save him and pulled him back from the gates of hell. Unfortunately, seeing that his tone was a little embarrassed, Zhang Wuji hurriedly asked, "Unfortunately what?" Unfortunately, just as he was about to recover, he suddenly contracted a strange disease. Xuemuhua sighed. His expression was a little ugly. Strange disease? Zhang Wuji laughed. There's a strange disease that you, miracle Dr. Xue, can't cure? As soon as the words left his mouth, he remembered that he could not cure his own hidden disease. His expression also turned ugly. Everyone's life and death are predetermined. The only thing I can do is to pull some people who accidentally cut the cube back from the gates of hell to their original positions. Xuemuhua could not help but look at the vast sky. The art of medicine is so vast. If I could cure everything, I wouldn't be called a miracle doctor. I would be called a god. Zhang Wuji could not be bothered to listen to his nonsense. He asked directly, "What kind of disease is it? Where are they now?" Only then did Xuemuhua answer, "I don't know what the disease is exactly." At that time, Guijing's symptoms were alternating between cold and heat. His whole body was trembling, and he had a fever. I couldn't find the cause of the disease. Later on, I found a medical record. It seemed that there was a miracle medicine in the western region that could cure this disease. It was called golden pheasant frost nectar. After Princess Huajing heard about it, she brought Guijing to the western region to find medicine. Golden pheasant frost nectar? As the revered Ming, he was naturally knowledgeable. Moreover, he had been in the western region for a long time. Naturally, he knew more about these things than the people in the Central Plains. There's no such medicine in the western region. It can only be found further west. Xuemuhua could not help but praise, "Zhang Jiaozhu is indeed knowledgeable." At this moment, shouts could be heard from afar. It was obvious that Jinluan Fuwang and the others had found their way here. Zhang Wuji looked at them from afar and quickly asked, "Is there any problem with Guijing's ability in that area?" Xuemuhua was stunned. He did not understand for a moment. "What area?" Zhang Wuji snorted. "Didn't you say that Guijing's whole body was injured? Was he injured by a sword down there?" Only then did Xuemuhua react. She replied, "Hirogua's kidneys are full of water and yang qi. Naturally, there's no problem in that area." At the same time, he secretly despised her. You have a problem in that area, but you also want other men to have problems in that area. How dirty! Unexpectedly, Zhang Wuji's face lit up. That's good, that's good. Now it was Shui Muhua's turn to be puzzled. She thought, "Why are you so happy?" Zhang Wuji secretly thought, "Should I find a northern underworld divine skill? Or, now that song is over there, I'm afraid it won't be so easy to get the northern underworld divine skill. That Duan is protected by Reverend Yiding and the masters of Tianlong Temple, so it won't be so easy to make a move. Moreover, the situation in the western region is getting worse. It seems that the best breakthrough is still..." At this time, Shui Muhua said, "Zhang Jiaozhu, they're catching up. Don't you need to leave first?" For some reason, when facing the man in front of him, he always felt a kind of trembling in his soul. In comparison, it was easier to get along with the fierce Jinlu Fuwang and the others. After all, he knew the whereabouts of Huazhong, so they would not make things difficult for him. Zhang Wuji raised his head and looked at him with a faint smile. "Thank you for your advice, Miracle Dr. Shui." Shui Muhua immediately returned the gesture. "I don't deserve advice. You." Zhang Wuji withdrew his sneak attack and said lightly, "Miracle Dr. Shui has cured all the people in the world. I wonder if you can save your own life." Chapter 1832. After Zhang Wuji left, Jinlu Fuwang and the others rushed to the scene and found that Shui Muhua was already dead. They couldn't help but be shocked. How did he die? Very quickly, Hong Qigong and Zhou Badong also found their way over. When they saw the situation, they couldn't help but be furious. "What a scoundrel! You actually killed him to silence him." Jinlu Fuwang explained, "He became like this as soon as we got here. We don't know what happened either." Hong Qigong laughed coldly. "Are you saying that was Zhang Jiaozhu who did it?" "Zhang Jiaozhu is famous for being kind and generous. Why would he kill him?" Jinlu Fuwang was also a bit angry. "I am the Mongolian nation advisor. Do I need to lie about this? If I said it wasn't me, then it wasn't me." Zhou Batong rolled his eyes. "If it wasn't you, then it was these guys?" As soon as he finished speaking, he went to grab Nimiksing. Nimiksing's legs were broken, and he was relying on a walking stick. His movements were much slower than when he was at his peak. Plus, Zhou Batong suddenly made a move. How could he block it? In an instant, the acupuncture point on his shoulder was sealed. "Let go." Jinlu Fuwang was furious. Even though he didn't get along with these people, they were still on the same side. Plus, after learning the dragon-elephant prajna art, his mind and vision had broadened a lot. He no longer saw these people as enemies and subconsciously thought of them as his little brothers. Of course, the others wouldn't approve of this relationship. Now that he saw his little brothers being bullied, he couldn't just sit by and do nothing. He sent a palm strike at Zhou Batong. Zhou Batong immediately used the Void Bright Fist to block it. When the fist and palm collided, Zhou Batong let out a loud cry as he was sent flying back more than 3 meters. He couldn't help but look at his opponent in surprise. What kind of martial art is this? Dragon-elephant prajna art. Jinlu Fuwang stuck out his chest, extremely proud. Fun. Zhou Batong was instantly interested. His body flashed, and he used the left and right mutual combat technique to attack. Jinlu Fuwang didn't dare to be careless and used the dragon and elephant prajna to attack. Hong Qigong gave a humph and directly attacked Xiaoxiang Zi and the others. Even though those people were no match for the 5 ultimates individually, when they worked together, they weren't completely defenseless. In addition, Jinlu Fuwang would occasionally help them out. The two sides fought back and forth until the sky turned dark. On the other side of the exquisite chess game, after Song Qing-shu entered the wooden house, he found that Li Qiu-shui and Xian Sheng were facing each other, but their attention was attracted by a room that was revealed next to them. It turned out that when the two of them were fighting just now, the scattered palm force accidentally broke a wooden board, revealing a hidden and spacious room. A person was sitting in midair. Even though Xian Sheng was a grandmaster and Li Qiu-shui was a devil, they were still shocked by this strange scene. The cry of surprise just now was because of this. "Wu Yizi, is that you?" Just then, Tianshan Tonglao came in and quietly stared at the person in midair. Her expression was a little excited. Li Qiu-shui was shocked. She was just fighting with Xiansheng and suddenly appeared in the spacious room. She didn't know if there was a person or a ghost in midair. She was a little scared and didn't take a closer look at the person's appearance. Now that she heard Tianshan Tonglau's words, she quickly took a closer look. She saw that the person was 3 feet long, without a single strand of white hair. His face was like jade, and there wasn't a single wrinkle. He was obviously not young, but he was still in high spirits and had an elegant demeanor. She instantly became excited. "It really is you, senior." "No, it's not me." That person's expression was calm and even a little relieved. However, when he saw that the people who came in were not the descendant he had imagined, but Heaven Mountain Tonglao and Li Qiushui, his expression changed drastically. He denied it immediately and even tried to turn around. Unfortunately, he did not succeed even after trying a few times. His entire body was swaying in the air. Song Qingshu took a closer look. It turned out that the person's body was tied up by a black rope. The other end of the rope was connected to the beam, suspending his body in midair. Because the wooden board behind him was pitch black, so was the rope. When the 2 black layers overlapped, the rope couldn't be seen. At first glance, it looked like he was sitting in midair. It seems that his meridians are really broken. He can't even turn around. Wu Yizi tried to turn around, but it was only the rope that moved. Song Qingshu couldn't help but sympathize with him. When he first entered this world, his meridians were also broken. However, he couldn't practice martial arts, but at least he could move around without any problems. Wu Yizi's injury was obviously more serious. He couldn't even move freely. Tianshan Tonglao flew over and tried to carry him down. Unfortunately, she was small and it was difficult for her to carry him up. In fact, with her martial arts, it was not difficult for her to lift a huge rock that weighed a few hundred pounds. However, she didn't want to embarrass Wu Yizi, so she was in a dilemma. "Let me do it." Li Qiushui flew over and held Wu Yizi in her arms. She flew to the stone bed at the side and couldn't help but cry. "I didn't expect you to be so badly injured." "It's not me. You got the wrong person." Wu Yizi turned his face away and buried it in his hair. He didn't want to look at her. Song Qingshu sighed inwardly. These brothers and sisters were all proud people. In the original work, Wu Yizi would rather spend decades looking for a successor to avenge him than ask for help from Heavenly Mountain Tonglao and Li Qiushui. This showed how arrogant he was. He didn't expect that in this world his most embarrassing side would be seen by the 2 women who admired him in the past. How could he stand it? Seeing Wu Yizi's reaction, Tianshan Tonglao was furious. She directly slapped Li Qiushui. Li Qiushui dodged and shouted, "Wu Xingyun, what are you doing?" Tianshan Tonglao gritted her teeth and said, "Wu Yizi is like this because of you and Ding Chuanxiu." Li Qiushui held her breath. I didn't know that Ding Chuanxiu was so ruthless. It would have been better if she didn't say it. Once she did, Tianshan Tonglao became even angrier. Her moves became more ruthless and deadly. Li Qiushui didn't dare to be careless. She quickly focused and fought back. Seeing the 2's exquisite martial arts moves, Xiansheng was secretly surprised. Where did these 2 women come from? They were so powerful. Fortunately, they fought each other. Thinking of this, he hurriedly bowed to Wu Yizi and said, "Senior, I am the one who solved the Jinlong chess game." "It's you." Wu Yizi finally came back to his senses. He noticed his attire and couldn't help but exclaim, "So you're a Shaolin monk. You can solve my chess game. You're very smart. But judging from your attire, you obviously have a high status in Shaolin. Moreover, your martial arts might not be weaker than mine. It's not appropriate to let you do that." Chapter 1833. Xiansheng glared at him furiously. "Mr. Song, so many people outside saw me breaking the exquisite chess game. So how could it be fake?" Earlier on, Ouyangming had evoked the fear of the 10,000 ancestral swords, so he was no longer as arrogant as before. Even though he was furious, he dared not curse anymore. Song Qingshu noted, "Your Excellency, I've witnessed your intelligence, and I'm sure that you can't break the exquisite chess game." "You." Xiansheng flushed, and he wanted to jump up and tear Wu Yaji apart. Unfortunately, he was too shocked during their last fight, and he had not fully recovered yet. If he acted rashly, he would only die. His life was not a big deal, but the temple's plan was a big deal. This young master is? Wu Yazi could not help but look at Song Qingshu. Seeing how Xian Cheng, who had great martial arts and a high status in the Shaolin Temple, dared not retort to a young man, he became extremely curious about the young man's identity. Looking at his handsome appearance, and the most important thing was that he had a calm temperament as he stood there, he secretly praised in his heart. This kind of person is the best candidate for the successor of the Xiaoyao sect. It's a pity that he didn't break the exquisite chess game. I'm Song Qingshu. Greetings, Senior Wu Yazi. Song Qingshu bowed. Whether it was because of his age or his relationship with Li Qingluo, he deserved the greeting. Oh, you're the Golden Snake King, who's been famous these years. Wu Yazi was rather surprised too. He had been looking for a successor to take revenge on Ding Chuanxiu all these years, so he naturally paid attention to young talents in the martial arts world. For example, Xiao Feng was one of the candidates he was looking for. Unfortunately, he did not come to the exquisite chess game this time. Sure enough, heroes come from young. You're Wu Yazi. At this moment, the people outside slowly entered. Ku Rong was overjoyed when he saw the situation inside. Master Korong, I haven't seen you for many years, but you're still as elegant as ever. Wu Yazi smiled. He used to be good friends with Ku Rong, and in the original work, he even asked if Master Korong came to the exquisite chess game. Ku Rong was shocked when he saw the rope that was tied around Wu Yazi's body and that he was paralyzed. It's unfortunate that a traitorous disciple appeared in our sect. Wu Yazi sighed faintly and stopped explaining. He did not want to talk about the sect scandals in front of so many outsiders. Master, Su Xinghe and the rest also squeezed in, unable to hold back their sobs. Huh, why are you injured? Wu Yazi was in seclusion in the innermost chamber, waiting for the selected disciples to come in. Therefore, he didn't notice what was happening outside. He was injured by the Mongolians. That Jinluan Fuang is so strong. After Su Xinghe explained, he suddenly saw Song Qingshu and the others and hurriedly said, Master, they're the ones who came to cause trouble. He then explained what had just happened. Oh, Wu Yazi's expression changed, but he didn't respond immediately. Song Qingshu couldn't help but shake his head. Senior, you found such a muddle-headed disciple who can't tell right from wrong. No wonder you haven't been able to take revenge after so many years. Su Xinghe was angry. Song Qingshu, all the heroes in the world are here today. Justice is in everyone's heart. Don't think that you can do whatever you want just because you're good at martial arts. Song Qingshu sighed. I'm clearly trying to save your master's life, but you keep stopping me. Instead, you're helping the person who wants to kill your master. You've really wasted your years. Hearing this, Su Xinghe couldn't help but bristle with anger. But he respected his master the most, so he was a little hesitant when he heard that someone wanted to kill his master. Ba, Xian Ci stood out. Almsgiver Song, please don't talk nonsense. Who wants to kill Senior Wu Yazi? The seniority in Shaolin Temple was divided into Ling, Xian, Hui, and Su. Wu Yazi was of the same generation as the abbot of the Ling sect, so he was naturally his senior. Song Qingshu smiled. Whoever can't hold it in anymore will be the one who jumps out. The people of Shaolin Temple were furious. Reverend Eating couldn't help but say, Almsgiver Song, Shaolin Temple is, after all, the most powerful temple in the martial arts world. If there's no solid evidence, I'm afraid that such an accusation will be hard to convince. Reverend Eating was a man of virtue and prestige. Hearing his words, the people around him all nodded. Song Qingshu also respected Reverend Eating, so he said to Wu Yazi, if I'm right, I'm afraid that the reason you asked your disciple to set up the exquisite chess game this time is to choose a last disciple to take revenge for you. Wu Yazi was stunned. That's right, revenge. Ku Rong glanced at his hands and feet. Is it Ding Chuanxiu? Wu Yazi's face darkened. He was an extremely arrogant man, and it was already a lifelong shame for him to be plotted against by his own disciple. Now that so many people in the martial arts world knew about it, it was even more embarrassing. Song Qing-shu had roughly guessed what he was thinking, knowing that it would be difficult for him to admit it. He said for him, back then, Senior Wu Yizi knew that Ding Chunxiu was not a good person, so he didn't teach him the profound martial arts of our sect. But Ding Chunxiu hated him, so he took the opportunity to plot against Senior Wu Yizi and knock him off the cliff. Although Senior Wu Yizi survived, he was seriously injured and his limbs were broken. He couldn't take revenge by himself, so he planned to choose a last disciple to teach him the martial arts of our sect and clean up the sect for him. Wu Yizi sighed, obviously full of helplessness. I see. Reverend Eating nodded. But why did you say that someone wanted to kill him? Song Qing-shu said with a smile. Ding Chunxiu is a famous devil among the evil sections. Who here can guarantee that they can kill him? They looked at each other with hesitation. Reverend Eating replied, if we were to talk about martial arts, I am confident that I can defeat Ding Chunxiu. But he also has a world-famous poison skill. If we were to fight to the death, I am not confident that I can kill him. Reverend, you're a kind man. I'm afraid you won't kill him, even if you have a chance. Song Qing-shu complimented him and then said to the others, even someone like you, one of the 5 greats of the Central Plains, can't guarantee that you can kill Ding Chunxiu. Let me ask you, Senior Wu Yizi's new last disciple, how can he be sure that he can kill Ding Chunxiu? The group nodded. Even if the martial arts of Wu Yizi's sect were amazing, no disciple will be able to kill Ding Chunxiu in less than 20 or 30 years. But if that happened, Ding Chunxiu might have died of old age. How could he take revenge then? Wu Yizi must have thought about this. Seeing that it was about time, Song Qing-shu said, Senior Wu Yizi has been planning to clean up the sect for decades. It's impossible that he didn't think about this. The reason why he still wants to choose a last disciple is that he plans to transfer all his power to that last disciple through enlightenment. In this way, the last disciple will be able to learn martial arts with half the effort and get revenge in a very short time. Wu Yizi, you're crazy. If you transfer the inner force of the Northern Underworld divine skill to someone else, you'll die. At this time, the 2 women who were fighting on the other side heard his words. They stopped and looked at Wu Yizi anxiously. Chapter 1834. Tianshan Tonglao panicked and said, but Ding Chunxiu has already. Before she could finish, Song Qing-shu interrupted, since I, an outsider, know your plan, I think the Shaolin Temple might know it too. Xuanqing, the monk, tried so hard to get in here because he wanted to get Senior Wu Yizi's inner force, didn't he? Don't slander us. A monk from the Shaolin Temple said, Xuanqing is proficient in the 13 ultimate skills. His inner force is extraordinary. Why would he covet other people's inner force? Wu Yizi nodded. Yes, Master Xuanqing's inner force is not weaker than mine. It doesn't make sense that he would try so hard to get my inner force. Chen Jelua couldn't help but snort. The eminent monks of the Shaolin Temple are highly respected. Why would they play such dirty tricks? On the contrary, some people are trying to sow discord between us. I don't know what they are up to. Song Qing-shu glanced at him but was in no mood to talk to him. They were not on the same level now. He explained to Wu Yizi, Senior, you may not know this, but the martial arts of the Shaolin Temple, no matter how peaceful they are still murderous. To practice a unique skill, you need the corresponding dharma to dissolve it. But if you have a high dharma, you won't bother to learn those murderous martial arts. That's why the most people in the Shaolin Temple have practiced the 12 ultimate skills at the same time. Reverend Eating nodded slightly. That's true. As a peerless expert of the present age and a Buddhist at the same time, he could faintly see through this connection. Song Qing-shu continued. As for this Master Xuanqing, he has devoted himself to martial arts and practiced the 13 ultimate skills. Unfortunately, his dharma cultivation is not high enough to dissolve the evil qi in them. He has been possessed by the devil and is plagued by hidden diseases. He should have needed 2 or 3 years to recover, but he was injured by my sword qi last time and almost became disabled. Everyone was shocked. They had seen the Shaolin Temple swallow their anger. Although they knew that Shaolin Temple had suffered losses in his hands, they didn't expect that they would suffer so much. After all, Xiancheng was known as the best in the Shaolin Temple in the past 200 years. His martial arts were well known in the martial arts world. How could he be disabled? Song Qing-shu continued. Although Xiancheng was saved by the masters of Shaolin Temple and reverend eating, the hidden trouble in his body broke out in advance. If he didn't deal with it, his meridians would be broken in 3 months at most. But he was reluctant to give up his martial arts, so he set his eyes on Senior Wu Yazi. He used the North Underworld Divine Kung Fu to dispel his Shaolin martial arts, so that his hidden trouble would be gone. At the same time, he would get his inner force no less than before. What a good plan. Hearing his analysis, all the disciples of Wu Yazi were shocked. Even Su Xinghe, who had a good relationship with them, couldn't help but glare at the Shaolin Temple masters. He was afraid that he had almost pushed his master to the gates of hell. Tianshan Tonglao was furious. Master Ling Min was an eminent monk. I didn't expect that his disciples were full of tricks. Li Qiushui also sneered. Wu Yazi is so cunning. Do you really think that there is no one in the Xiaoyao sect? The Xiaoyao sect? Among the younger generation, almost no one had ever heard of the Xiao and Yao sect. On the contrary, the expressions of some of the more knowledgeable older people changed. Just now, they had been curious about the background of these two women. They were both beautiful and had incomparably high martial arts. Now, they suddenly realized that they were from the Xiao and Yao sect. Umipa, Xian Ci finally spoke. May I ask, benefactress, what is cunning? What benefactor Song said just now was just his own speculation. There is no proof. We don't want to argue. As the saying goes, the innocent are innocent. On the other hand, my junior brother Xiancheng solved Mr. Wu Yazi's exquisite chess game in front of everyone. This can't be faked, right? This. Li Qiushui was speechless. Xiancheng was the only one who could solve the exquisite chess game. It was hard to explain with cunning. Wu Yazi also sighed. This is the will of heaven. This is the will of heaven. Suddenly, he relaxed his frown and smiled. Since this is the will of heaven, you can solve my chess game. It shows that you are the best in the world. Maybe you can help me with something big. But I don't know if you are willing to change your sect and be my disciple. Xiancheng looked embarrassed. In fact, his plan was to sneak in. Even if he agreed to be his disciple, there were only the two of them in the room. Nobody would know. Wu Yazi would die after passing on his skills. That way, no one would know. But now, Song Qing-shu and the others broke in, and the other people followed them. How could he, as the pride of Shaolin, change his sect in front of all the heroes in the world? Song Qing-shu smiled. Senior, you were wrong. He didn't solve the exquisite chess game. Xian Ci said angrily. Just now, my junior brother solved the chess game. We all saw it with our own eyes. Do you think you can distort the truth? He only memorized the chess record. The person who solved the game is someone else. And he is related to Senior Wu Yazi, Song Qing-shu said slowly. Wu Yazi was surprised and asked who. Song Qing-shu didn't answer. Suddenly, his body flashed, and he appeared next to Shuju. The Shaolin disciples were shocked and began to attack him. Song Qing-shu waved his hand to block the attacks, and then reached for Shuju's shoulder. The masters of the temple delayed for a while, and Shuju finally came to his senses. He raised his palm to meet the attack. The last fight between them had left a deep shadow in him. He didn't dare to hold back, so he used his special skill. Oh, that seems to be the Northern Underworld Energy Blade. Tianshan Tonglao asked with uncertainty. When their master taught them martial arts, she learned the superior skill of 8 Desolation and 6 Directions. Wu Yazi learned the Northern Underworld Divine skill, and Li Qiushui learned the Minor Formless skill. Although they knew each other's martial arts, they were not familiar with each other. Wu Yazi also frowned and nodded. Obviously, he recognized the foundation of the Northern Underworld Divine skill. Li Qiushui said, his moves seemed to have the shadow of the Tianshan plum-breaking hand. Is he a disciple of Senior Sister? Tianshan Tonglao snorted. How could I teach a little monk? Seeing that the time was right, Song Qing-shu withdrew from the battle and stood aside with a smile. Reverend Yiding and the others admired him. Shuju's martial arts were very good, but he could still move freely in the face of such a master. His strength was really admirable. Did you see it clearly? Song Qing-shu asked the three Xiaoyao elders. Tianshan Tonglao stared at Shuju and asked, "Little monk, where did you learn your martial arts?" Shuju answered, "I was born in Shaolin, so I learned it." "Nonsense. When did you learn the martial arts of our Xiaoyao sect?" Li Qiushui sneered. Shuju put his palms together and said, "Monks don't lie. I learned my martial arts in Shaolin. If I lied, Buddha will not forgive me." Song Qing-shu smiled and said, "Little monk, you are cunning. You didn't lie, but the person who taught you martial arts is indeed in Shaolin." Tianshan Tonglao frowned and said, "The Xiaoyao sect has few disciples. Only we brothers and sisters can teach this little monk to this level, but is it our little sister?" Wu Yazi's eyes suddenly flashed with eagerness. Song Qing-shu couldn't help but despise him. It had been so many years, but he still couldn't forget that forbidden love. Li Songhai married Yu Wumu, a hero of the age, and their daughter was Xiao Longnu. It had nothing to do with him. Li Qiushui's eyes flashed with anger. "It's been so many years, but you still think about her." Tianshan Tonglao gloated, but she still shook her head and said, "It's impossible. Our little sister is a woman. How could she hide in Shaolin?" Li Qiushui frowned and said, "If it's not our little sister, then..." Chapter 1835. Someone asked curiously, "Who is it?" Heavenly Mountain Tonglao and Li Qiushui looked at each other, but did not speak. Wu Yizi thought for a moment and shook his head. "This is a secret of our sect. It is not convenient to tell outsiders." It was taboo to ask about the internal affairs of sect. Hearing this, everyone did not ask anything else. Song Qing-shu thought that he would ask them after they left. Given his relationship with Heavenly Mountain Tonglao and Li Qiushui, they would not hide anything from him. Wu Yizi sighed and looked at Shuju and the others. "So that person is in your Shaolin Temple. No wonder he could solve my exquisite chess game." Heavenly Mountain Tonglao snorted. "Although we feel sorry for him, we have been friends for so many years. He sent someone to steal Wu Yizi's cultivation. He is too disrespectful." Li Qiushui echoed. "Yes, if it was any other matter, we would teach him everything we know. But this time, isn't he trying to take Wu Yizi's life?" "Don't say anything else." Wu Yazi's face was filled with guilt. "At the end of the day, we've let Master down. We've let him down." Heavenly Mountain Tonglao and Li Qiushui also looked resentful, but did not refute. Those in the room who knew their identities were curious. There were people at the top of the Jianghu. What were they afraid of? Or did they owe someone something? Shuju suddenly said, "No matter what, we solved your exquisite chess game. Senior, you should fulfill your promise. Do you want to break your promise?" This, Wu Yizi was in a dilemma. Song Qing-shu said calmly, "What did Senior Wu Yazi promise?" Shuju was about to answer, but he was speechless. Although everyone knew that Wu Yizi wanted to choose a last disciple, he did not announce it to the world. Unexpectedly, Wu Yizi said, "I do intend to choose a disciple to help me clean up the mess." Song Qing-shu almost couldn't help but scold him for being a stupid teammate. However, he understood that Wu Yazi was arrogant and unwilling to lie. At the same time, he didn't want Heaven Mountain Tonglao and Li Qiushui to intervene in this matter. However, he didn't consider one thing. "May I ask who is the sect that Senior Wu Yazi wants to clean up?" Wu Yazi's face darkened. After all, this was one of his biggest regrets. He couldn't bring himself to say it again in front of so many people. Fortunately, Su Xinghe interjected. "Didn't I say it before? It was the constellation Old Monster, Ding Chuanxiu." Song Qing-shu laughed and said, "What a coincidence. Not long ago, Ding Chuanxiu was personally killed by Old Tong." "Ding Chuanxiu is dead?" As soon as he said this, everyone was shocked. It must be known that Ding Chuanxiu's martial arts were not the best, but his poison skills were really terrifying. No one present wanted to provoke such a great devil, But who would have thought that he would die like this? After all, what happened in the Western Xia country had just happened. The people in the Central Plains might not have gotten the news so quickly. Yes, he fell into my hands and was killed by me, Heaven Mountain Tonglao said with hatred, as if she was still angry. He is dead. Wu Yazi's eyes flashed with a trace of confusion. He had been thinking about how to take revenge for decades. He had painstakingly designed the exquisite chess game. Who knew that his enemy was dead? At this time, Song Qing-shu said, since the preconditions are no longer there, the exquisite chess game is meaningless. Senior Wu Yazi, you don't need to be in a hurry to help your disciple take revenge. But Shuzhu wanted to say something, but was interrupted by Song Qing-shu. What? Are you really coveting Senior Wu Yazi's martial arts? You have to know that he was so old and seriously injured. He relied on his internal force to support himself. If he imparted his internal force to others, it would mean that he would die immediately. What you are doing is against the compassion of Buddhism, right? Hearing this, even the neutral people in the room looked at the people of Shaolin in a strange way. Xianxi's expression changed. Finally, he sighed, Donor Song, you must be joking. We're just here to make friends. We don't have any other intentions. There was nothing he could do about it. If Ding Chunxiu were still alive, he could make use of Wu Yazi's reluctance to seek revenge. But now that Ding Chunxiu was dead, all his excuses were meaningless. The most important thing now was to restore Shaolin's image in people's hearts. At this time, Wu Yazi said, this time I set up the exquisite chess game with the intention of accepting a disciple. If Master Xuanqing is willing to leave Shaolin and join my sect, I will definitely teach him everything I know. I will definitely teach you everything I know. After all, he was not a fool. There was no need to sacrifice his cultivation when Ding Chunxiu was already dead. Xiancheng's face turned red. No need. Goodbye. He was the most powerful person in Shaolin in the past 200 years. How could he become someone else's disciple? Song Qing-shu said with a smile, this master's martial arts have gone astray. If he gives up his cultivation as soon as possible, he may be able to save his life. If he gives up his cultivation any later, I'm afraid that he won't be able to become a vegetarian and pray to Buddha. Xian Cheng, who was walking out, stopped and replied, you don't have to worry about it. Since the people of Shaolin had failed their purpose, it was meaningless to stay here any longer. Then they said goodbye to the others and left. Chun Jialuo and the others were on good terms with Shaolin. Seeing them leave, they remembered that they had just fought with Tianshan, Tonglao, and the others. They knew that they would not have a good time staying here, so they hurried to leave. Tianshan Tonglao could not do anything in front of so many people, so she could only scoff to express her dissatisfaction. When they left, Yuan Zi pulled Hua Qingtong away. Hua Qingtong initially wanted to find an opportunity to persuade Song Qing-shu, but she hesitated when she recalled how unhappy Zhang Wuji was earlier and how cold he was when he left. She thought that it was inappropriate for her to be so close to Song Qing-shu, so she left with him. Seeing as Hua Qingtong was hesitant to speak before she left, Song Qing-shu sent a voice transmission to her. Miss Hua, we'll meet again if fate permits. Next time you might sleep me into submission. Even though Hua Qingtong did not notice the pun in his words, her instinctive reaction made her realize that he must be up to no good. As such, she could not help but glare at him before she left. Reverend Eating also put his palms together and left. Firstly, he wanted to know how Hong Qigong and Zhou Badong were doing, and secondly, he wanted to treat Master Kurong's injury. Back then, Monk Kurong and Wu Yazi were best friends, but he could only leave first because he was injured. Brother Wu Yazi, I'll visit you again next time. Wu Yazi also smiled. I'll definitely welcome you when the time comes. Duan Yu looked at Li Qiushui, Wang Yuyin, and Li Qinglu from time to time. There were 3 goddesses here that he yearned for day and night, which made him reluctant to leave. Unfortunately, Ku Rong and Reverend Eating were here, so he had no choice but to be stubborn. Fairy sister, see you next time. Li Qiushui chuckled when she heard what he said before he left. What an idiot. I wonder who else he's calling. Chapter 1836. Li Qiushui's smile froze. She could not help but reply, "What are you thinking? Young Master Duan is half a disciple of ours." Then she told them about how Duan Yu had mistakenly entered the infinite jade cave. As she spoke, she looked at Heaven Mountain Tong Lao provocatively. Heaven Mountain Tong Lao's expression changed. She had already vaguely heard about Li Qiushui and Wu Yazi's marriage. However, she had subconsciously thought that Li Qiushui was making it up to provoke her. Now that she had confirmed it in front of Wu Yazi, she finally understood that she had been lying to herself all along. Wu Yazi's expression softened. He could not help but sigh. That young Master Duan is handsome. He fits our carefree sex criteria for choosing disciples. The disciple you chose is much better than the one I spent so much effort to find. The group could not help but smile when they thought about Xian Cheng's bald appearance. Li Qiushui held Wang Yuyan's hand and pulled her over. "Yuyan, come and greet your grandfather." "Grandfather?" Wang Yuyan stared blankly at the handsome man in front of her. Wu Yazi glanced at Li Qiushui. Li Qiushui whispered, "She's Qing Luo's daughter." "Qing Luo." Wu Yazi's calm expression became agitated. "Child, what's your surname?" Wang Yuyan answered subconsciously, "My surname is Wang." "Wang Yuyan. Good name." Wu Yazi could not help but ask, "How has your mother been all these years?" "Not good." Wang Yuyan's eyes reddened. "Back then, you all left without saying goodbye, leaving her all alone. She had no choice but to marry into the Wang clan. Her father died young, and she's been alone all these years. Even though she's never said anything, I know that her life must have been hard." Song Qing could not help but sigh. Li Qing Luo was indeed like a block of ice when he saw her before. It was as if everyone owed her money. One look, and he could tell that she was an unhappy woman. He hoped that his appearance could bring some color to her life. Song Qing could not help but smile when he thought of the endless passion hidden under her ice. "We'll let her down." Wu Yazi heaved a long sigh. It was as if he was reminiscing about the past. "Your grandmother and I separated because of some matters. Then, I was plotted against by Ding Chunxiu." Suddenly, his gaze fell on Li Qinglu, and he noticed that she bore some resemblance to Wang Yuyan. He couldn't help but exclaim in surprise, "Is this your older sister?" Wang Yuyan was taken aback, but she still nodded in the end. Yes, in a sense, this woman was indeed her elder sister. "I didn't expect Qing Luo to have two daughters." Wu Yazi couldn't help but call out to her, "Child, what's your name?" "Me?" Li Qinglu looked at the man whom old princess could never forget and answered subconsciously, "My name is Li Qinglu." Immortal palm of erecting shio stem, clear dew of cloud surface. Good name. Wu Yazi suddenly exclaimed, "Why don't you and your sister have the same surname?" Li Qiushui looked a little embarrassed. Heavenly Mountain Tong Lao finally found an opportunity to fight back. She said gloatingly, "Younger brother, this is not your granddaughter." Li Qiushui remarried the emperor of Xixia and had a granddaughter with another man. As expected, Wu Yazi's expression changed dramatically. He had been looking at Li Qinglu kindly, but now his face froze. He didn't know what to say. Feeling the heavy and awkward atmosphere in the air, Su Xinghe tactfully led the disciples out. "We're all injured. Let's go out and heal first. Then we'll come back to serve the patriarch." Song Qing threw a porcelain bottle to them. "This is the 9 rotations Sign pill. It's very effective for your internal injuries." The 9 rotations Sign pill. Su Xinghe was shocked. The other disciples of the 3rd generation didn't know about it, but he knew that this was the supreme healing medicine of the Xiaoyao sect. He didn't expect that this young man could take out a bottle so casually. It seemed that he really had a close relationship with the Xiaoyao sect. Recalling how he had obstructed the other party multiple times, Su Xinghe couldn't help but bow. "Thank you, Gongzi. Just now, my eyes were failing me and I couldn't recognize who my true friend is. I hope Gongzi will forgive me." Song Qingshu smiled. "You're too kind. You just want to protect your teacher. Go and heal your injuries." Su Xinghe thanked him again and again. Then, he led the disciples out. The room suddenly became much more spacious. Why does Prince Song have the sacred medicine of our Xiaoyao sect? Wu Yizi couldn't help but ask. Heavenly Mountain Tong Lao gloated. He's your cheap grandson-in-law. My grandson-in-law. Wu Yizi was stunned. He looked at Wang Yuyin subconsciously. He saw her shaking her head awkwardly. Then, he remembered the word cheap. His face darkened. After all, no man would like to see his wife give birth to another man's child. Song Qingshu was also speechless. He felt that there was something wrong with these brothers and sisters. He coughed and said, "Actually, your daughter and I are very close friends." They had already slept together, so it shouldn't be wrong to say that they were close. Your daughter? The group didn't know how to react. Wang Yuyin was the first to ask. Brother Song, you know my mother? Song Qingshu nodded with a smile. Yes, we are also very good friends. Speaking of which, you should call me uncle. Wang Yiyin's face reddened, and she secretly spat on the ground before turning her face away. Song Qingshu was worried that the others would think too much and find it hard to explain. He continued, Tong Lao, you're also one of my people. Coupled with your relationship with Qing Lu, it's not strange that I have the 9 revolutions bear snake Maru. Heavenly Mountain Tong Lao panicked. Tui, what do you mean I'm one of your people? She didn't want any misunderstanding in front of Wu Yizi. Song Qingshu smiled and said, You've been captured by me. Your life is in my hands now. Aren't you one of my people? Seeing that Heavenly Mountain Tong Lao didn't refute, Wu Yizi couldn't help but be surprised. He knew that Heavenly Mountain Tong Lao was the strongest among the 3 of them. Even she was captured by this young man. I've heard some rumors about Prince Song in Jianghu. I didn't expect his martial arts to be higher than I imagined. Wu Yizi couldn't help but sigh. Wu Yizi couldn't help but sigh. He even had a thought. Why wasn't he the one who solved the exquisite chess game? But on second thought, the opponent's martial arts were unfathomable. Why would he disperse his inner force and join the carefree sect? Senior, you flatter me. Song Qingshu paused for a moment before continuing. Actually, I came here on behalf of your 2 senior and junior sisters to treat your injuries. My injuries? Wu Yizi smiled bitterly. He didn't think too much of it. I've been paralyzed for decades. How can they be treated? In fact, if they could be treated, Su Xinghe and Xue Muhua would have treated him long ago. The 2 of them were divine hands. However, his injuries couldn't be treated by humans. Song Qingshu said calmly, I don't know if you've heard that my meridians were also broken at the lion slaying convention. I've heard of it. It's a mystery in Jianghu. Not only did you not become a disabled person, but your martial arts improved by leaps and bounds. No one knows why. Wu Yizi's expression suddenly became a little more passionate. Can it be treated? Heavenly Mountain Tong Lao interrupted. Junior brother, don't worry. This guy's skills are unpredictable. He must have a way. Li Qiushui also echoed. Prince Song has created one miracle after another over the years. If he says he can treat it, he definitely can. Chapter 1837. This. Wu Yizi looked troubled. This is our Xiaoyao sect's biggest secret. It's not convenient for outsiders to know about it. Heaven Mountain Tong Lao rolled her eyes. No matter how you look at it, he's not an outsider. There's no harm in telling him. Li Qiushui agreed. Yes. Moreover, Prince Song has done our Xiaoyao sect a great favor. However, you're the current sect leader. You should tell him. Wu Yizi was stunned. He did not expect the 2 of them to have the same opinion. He thought about how he was saved by Chu Yang today and how he would need Chu Yang's help to heal his broken meridians. He sighed and did not insist. If that's the case, there's no harm in telling young master, Jiumaji said. I like the beautiful scenery of this mountain and want to go sightseeing. I wonder if Senior Wu Yizi will allow a disciple from outside to show me around? Wu Yizi was stunned. He knew that Jiumaji was trying to avoid arousing suspicion. He cannot help but feel grateful. King Ming can look for Su Xinghe. He will find someone to guide you. Jiumaji bowed and left. Li Qiushui could not help but laugh. This monk is not bad. He's much better than those monks from Shaolin. Song Qingshu smiled. King Ming is my good friend. Aside from his love for martial arts, he's also an accomplished monk. Since he's your friend, he's naturally a friend of the Xiaoyao sect. Wu Yizi nodded. Young master, do you know the history of the Xiaoyao sect? The Xiaoyao sect has always been mysterious. It's hard for outsiders to know about it. Song Qingshu shook his head. He had actually learned a little about it from Fu Mini and Wei Ruolin. However, it was not as convincing as what Wu Yizi, the current sect leader, had said. Wu Yizi looked at the sky, and his expression became a little distant. This has to start from the time when Zhao Kuangyin, the founder of the Song dynasty, released his military power with a cup of wine. Back then, Emperor Shizong of the Great Zhou dynasty was like a strategist and used troops like a god. He was as dazzling as the sun. Everyone thought that he would be able to conquer the land in a few years. Unfortunately, the heavens were jealous of his talent. Before he died, he entrusted his wife and children to his trusted aide, Zhao Kuangyin, hoping that he would protect the country for him. However, he did not expect that the loyal Zhao Kuangyin would turn around and start a mutiny in Chenqiye. The Great Zhou dynasty was replaced by Song. Song Qingshu nodded. This part of history was widely known. Many people criticized Zhao Kuangyin for bullying the orphans and widows. In the end, his country was taken away by Zhao Guangyi. Everyone thought that it was retribution. Wu Yizi continued. At that time, Zhao Kuangyin wanted to eliminate the root of the problem. Unfortunately, there were many old ministers of the Zhou dynasty in the imperial court who had been greatly indebted to the Emperor Shizong. They tried their best to stop him and save the lives of a few princes. However, Chai Shirong, the Prince of Chao, was still missing in the chaos. Chai Shijin, the Prince of Ji, was adopted by Pan Mei and changed his name to Pan Weiji. Chai Shihue, the Prince of Qi, was adopted by his father-in-law, Liu Yin, after the fall of the later Zhou dynasty and changed his name to Liu Duoxuan. Song Qingshu continued. Then, the seeds of revenge were planted in the hearts of the two princes. When they grew up, they tried to overthrow the Song dynasty and restore the Zhou dynasty. Liu Duoxuan did not even hesitate to seek refuge with Zhao Tingmei and instigated his relationship with his brother, Zhao Guangyi. He tried to make Liu Duoxuan usurp Zhao Guangyi's throne and reap the benefits. Unfortunately, Zhao Tingmei's rebellion was suppressed by Zhao Guangyi. Liu Duoxuan died, and his family was sent to the ends of Hainan. Pan Weiji fled to Jianghu. A hint of surprise flashed in Wu Yizi's eyes. How did Prince Song know so much about this? I only found out about this by chance. I hope that you can explain the rest. Song Qingshu thought of Tang Sire and Wei Ruolin. Their families had been trying to restore the Zhou dynasty for generations. They had fought wave after wave for this belief. For a moment, he could not help but sigh. Young master indeed has a deep relationship with our Xiaoyao sect. Wu Yizi sighed and continued. After the coup failed, Pan Weiji realized that the Song dynasty's fate was not over yet. I'm afraid that it could not be changed in a short period of time. So, he changed his name to Pan Lang and founded the Xiaoyao sect. He called himself the Xiaoyao Zi, hoping that when the fate of the Song dynasty declined, he could take advantage of it. A hint of shame flashed across Tianshan Tonglau's face. We have let him down. Song Qingshu looked at them in confusion. Wu Yizi let out a long sigh. Our master was the Xiaoyao Zi. He taught us the peerless divine skill and arranged for us to accumulate power in Tianshan, Xixia, and the Central Plains. Once the situation in the Song dynasty changed, we would rise up and restore the Zhou dynasty. Unfortunately, we were too unfilial. We were always jealous of each other. In addition, I was plotted against by the traitorous disciple Ding Chuanxiu. As a result, we missed several dangerous situations in the Song dynasty. Fang La's uprising, Prime Minister Zhongyang Yao's rebellion, and the Jinkong disaster. If Master had such a great opportunity, he would have succeeded in overthrowing the Song dynasty. Unfortunately, he could not wait for this opportunity. The Xiaoyao Zi has passed away? Song Qingshu could not help but ask when he heard the meaning behind his words. Wu Yizi nodded. No matter how good one's martial arts is, one cannot defeat time. For a moment, Heavenly Mountain Tong Lao and Li Qiushui revealed a distressed expression. Although they still looked young, the three of them were close to 100 years old. They did not know when they would pass away. Noticing their expressions, Song Qingshu could not do anything about it. After all, life and death were inescapable fates. He could only find a topic to divert their attention. Since the Xiaoyaozi has passed away, who is the person hiding in Shaolin Temple? Wu Yizi answered, Master, other than the four of us, four? Song Qingshu was startled. Wu Yizi looked embarrassed. He wanted to say something, but stopped. Li Qiushui snorted. The other one is my little sister. Song Qingshu suddenly understood why Wu Yizi was embarrassed. After all, he had fallen in love with his youngest wife's sister. It was a disgraceful past. Wu Yizi hurriedly changed the topic. Other than the four of us, Master has a son. A son? Song Qingshu was startled. This was the first time he had heard of it. Master is a descendant of the royal family after all. It's his responsibility to have children. However, he's been busy dealing with the Zhao and Song dynasties, so he doesn't have much time for his family. That's why he only has one son, Wu Yizi answered. Song Qingshu had a strange look on his face. What did he mean by spending less time on family? It was obvious that he spent less time on making a child. What's his name? Nameless, Wu Yizi answered. Song Qingshu was stunned. No name. Wu Yizi shook his head. You misunderstood. His name is Nameless. Master said that he would restore his royal name when he regained the Zhou dynasty. What is his current status in Shaolin Temple? Song Qingshu had a guess. Wu Yizi answered, I don't know his exact identity. I only thought of him in Shaolin Temple when I saw the little monk. Chapter 1838. It's really him. Song Qingshu couldn't help but sigh. His speculation had been confirmed. The sweeping monk seemed to have appeared out of thin air. No one knew where he came from, and his martial arts were extremely high. Only now did they know that he was the son of Xiaoyaozi. P, have you seen him? Wu Yizi asked in surprise. P. Song Qingshu nodded. I've sparred with him a few times. His martial arts are unfathomable. He paused for a moment and glanced at the three of them. His martial arts are higher than yours. P. Tianshan Tong Lao replied. That's not surprising. The three of us only learned a part of Master's skills. As Master's son and carrying the hope of restoring our country, Master must have taught him everything. Naturally, his martial arts are better than ours. P. Song Qingshu showed a fascinated expression. Your master is really amazing. Each of his martial arts is so vast that it's enough for you to practice for a lifetime. Tianshan Tong Lao majored in the 8 Desolations 6 Direction Supremacy. Wu Yizi majored in the Dark North Divine Skill, and Li Qiushui majored in the Small Non-Phase Method. The 3 martial arts of each of them were different, but all of them had reached the peak of the present age. The 3 of them nodded in unison. Yes, Master is the person closest to God that we have ever seen. But Song Qingshu was pondering inwardly. I've seen the sweeping monk several times, but he always appeared upright and peaceful, looking like an eminent monk who had achieved the Tao. He also shouldered the heavy responsibility of restoring his country, but he was much more indifferent than Murong Fu. I wonder if he still has the thought of restoring his country. Thinking of the arrangements these years, whether it was letting Chang Kun provoke the fight between the 6 major sects and the Ming dynasty, or supporting Chen Yuliang to become the leader of the beggar sect, it didn't seem like an ordinary martial arts sect. It seemed that they had a big plan. He didn't know if this was the idea of Xin Ci and the others, or the sweeping monk. Little Song, we have told you the biggest secret of our sect. Now you should treat Wu Yizi's injury. Tianshan Tong Lao's words interrupted his contemplation. Okay. Song Qingshu thought that he could investigate the Shaolin Temple later. The most important thing now was to treat Wu Yizi and return Xixia as soon as possible. However, Wu Yizi didn't believe that he could really cure him. After all, Su Xinghe and Xue Muhua had treated him before. They had used countless miraculous medicines, but to no avail. Moreover, a few decades had passed. He only agreed because he didn't want to disrespect Grand Senior Sister and Li Qiushui. P, how do you plan to save him? Tianshan Tonglau's medical skills were excellent. She did not choose to trust him blindly. P, now that things had come to this, Song Qing-shu didn't need to hide anything. He said directly, Senior Wu Yizi, your old injuries have all healed. If we treat them now, we'll have to break the bones in your limbs again and then connect them. I hope you can endure the pain for a while. If it can be cured, a little pain is nothing. Wu Yizi was a handsome man, but he could only stay in this dark wooden house like a cripple. He couldn't stand it anymore. But Tianshan Tonglao objected. Wu Yazi's limbs have been broken for so many years. Is it really possible to reconnect them now? Of course, not under normal circumstances, but I have this. Song Qing-shu took out a porcelain bottle from his pocket. This is... Tianshan Tonglao opened the bottle and saw that it was dark inside. A medicinal fragrance wafted out. Is this the legendary black jade reconnection ointment? Tianshan was located in the western region, and the Vajra sect was also in the western region. Naturally, she had heard of this medicine. That's right. Song Qing-shu sighed. Ever since I got together with Zhao Min, she was afraid that I would be in danger. So, she gave me all the spiritual medicine that she had with her. The most precious of them all was this black jade reconnection ointment. If we have the black jade reconnection ointment, it's possible to heal his broken bones. But Tianshan Tonglao frowned and looked at Wu Yizi. His meridians are also injured. It's been so many years. I'm afraid that his meridians have withered. Even if we reconnect his bones, it'll be useless. Song Qing-shu reached out and pointed. A gentle force shot out. Tianshan Tonglau's body swayed. She hurriedly circulated her energy to neutralize it. Is this the solitary yang finger? That's right. After I reconnect his broken bones, I'll use the solitary yang finger to reconnect his meridians. Wu Yizi's situation was different from that of Song Qing-shu's. During the lion slaughtering festival, Song Qing-shu had just been injured, so his meridians had not withered yet. That was why he could practice the divine, radiating scripture. However, Wu Yizi's meridians had withered. Even if he was given the divine, radiating scripture manual, he wouldn't be able to practice it. After he reconnects his meridians, I'll teach him the divine, radiating scripture and use the divine, radiating true qi to nourish his meridians. It'll take a few years to half a year for him to fully recover. Song Qing-shu continued. The legendary divine, radiating scripture that can bring the dead back to life? The people present were all elders of the martial arts world, and they were all very knowledgeable. Naturally, they had heard of the godly radiating scripture before. With the divine radiating scripture, Wu Yizi really has a chance to recover. Li Qiushui and Tianshan Tonglao looked at each other. They both saw the joy in each other's eyes. Even though Wu Yizi had said that he could save Wu Yizi, they were still uncertain. Now that they knew the method, they both thought that it would work. Such kindness. I really don't know how to repay you, young master. Wu Yizi was also excited. At first, he didn't think much of it. But now that he heard the explanation and realized that there was a chance for him to recover, he couldn't stay calm anymore. Then, he realized that he didn't know how to repay him. Take him as a disciple? Don't joke around. Teach him all my skills? But Wu Yizi's skills were definitely higher than mine. Song Qing-shu smiled faintly. Senior, please don't worry. I've already received my payment. You've received your payment? Wu Yizi's eyes showed a hint of doubt. Li Qiushui smiled and said, Eldest senior sister gave away the Misty Peaks Vulture Palace for you. Tianshan Tonglao snorted. Didn't you give away your Class 1 hall as well? Wu Yizi's expression changed. No, I'll find something to repay Prince Song myself. I don't need you to sacrifice so much. Song Qing-shu shook his head. Senior, don't worry. I've already received your payment. Plus, we have a deep relationship. It's only right for me to save you. You've already received it? Relationship? Wu Yizi thought for a long time, but he still didn't know what it meant. Even Li Qiushui and Tianshan Tonglao were stunned. But soon, they thought of something and looked at Wang Yuyan. No matter how they thought about it, it could only be her. Noticing everyone's gaze, Wang Yuyan's face turned red. At the same time, her heart beat wildly. Brother Song, what do you mean? My cousin is still here. Sensing the strange atmosphere, Song Qingshu realized that they had misunderstood. He was referring to his relationship with Li Qingluo, but they had mistaken it for Wang Yuyan. However, it wasn't convenient to explain the situation in detail, so he could only go with the flow. Song Qingshu asked Li Qiushui to take Wang Yuyan and Li Qinglu out of the room. Firstly, he could explain to Su Xinghe and the others. Secondly, he needed the two girls to leave later. Then, he took off Wu Yi's clothes and asked Tianshan Tonglao to come forward. Tianshan Tonglao was a bit bashful at first, but after hearing Song Qingshu say that she had better medical skills and was more suitable for this job, she didn't refuse anymore. She went forward and felt all of Wu Yi's broken bones. Then, she hit his sleeping acupoint. She exerted strength in her 10 fingers and broke the broken bones one by one. Although Wu Yi's acupoint was hit, he still woke up from the pain. Tianshan Tonglao's hands were as swift as the wind. She broke the big and small bones and immediately put them back together. Song Qingshu applied the black jade connection ointment, bandaged it, and clamped a wooden board on it. Then, she applied golden needles to reduce the pain. Li Qiushui, Su Xinghe, and the others paced back and forth outside like ants on a hot pan. After waiting for a few hours, they finally came out. How is it? They all looked nervous. Tianshan Tonglao wiped the beads of sweat off her forehead. Don't worry, he won't die. Next, we just need to wait for him to recover. Then, we'll let Song Qingshu do it. Song Qingshu complained inwardly. He didn't know how long it would take for Wu Yizi to recover. The situation in Western Xia was changing rapidly. He didn't have that much time to wait. What should he do next? Chapter 1839. Song Qingshu called Li Qiushui and Tianshan Tonglao into his room for a discussion. Wu Yizi has been injured for a long time. The black jade ointment is magical, but it'll take at least half a year for him to recover, and it's only because he has a profound skill. An ordinary old man might not be able to recover completely. Tianshan Tonglao agreed with him. Yes, Wu Yizi might need to recuperate for half a year before he can perform his solitary yang finger to connect his meridians. Song Qingshu smiled bitterly. But I don't have that much time to wait here for half a year, so I'll need to return to Xixiao first and come back to treat him after that. This is different from what we agreed on. Li Qiushui frowned slightly. After all, she and Heaven Mountain Tonglao had paid a huge price to get Song Qingshu to help them. Now that he had left in advance, what if something happened to Wu Yi's injury? Nevertheless, she knew very well that it was impossible to keep him here for half a year. Tianshan Tonglao pondered for some time before she said, "The situation in Xixia is dangerous, and it's a chaotic time now. Half a year's time isn't long, but it's not short either. The people in Jianghu might not have a tomorrow, even if they live past today. What if something happens to you?" Song Qingshu responded, "You don't have to worry about that. Based on my martial arts, nobody can stop me if I want to leave." Li Qiushui and Tianshan Tonglao nodded. They knew his martial arts cultivation base very well, and it was indeed difficult for anyone to hurt him back then. Tianshan Tonglao suggested after some thought, "As the saying goes, it's better to be safe than sorry. Why don't you leave the secret manual of the Divine Radiation Sutra behind? That way, if anything happens to you in the future, we can ask the Duan family from Dali to treat you with the solitary yang finger first." Li Qiushui nodded. Wu Yizi and Master Kurong were best friends back then. If he's the middleman, it's possible to ask a master from the Duan family from Dali to treat you. Tianshan Tonglao continued, "Young fella, we're not coveting your secret manual. The Divine Radiation Sutra is magical, but the martial arts that we cultivate aren't inferior to it at all. We've devoted our lives to our sect's martial arts, so we can't practice other martial arts halfway." Song Qingshu smiled. "You're worrying too much. I was planning to leave the holy radiant scripture behind to reassure you. After all, If he wanted to take over Spirit Vulture Palace and Class 1 Hall from them, he would feel a little embarrassed if he did not give them something in return. P, seeing that he agreed, the two women breathed a sigh of relief. After all, although their martial arts were high, the other party's martial arts were even more unfathomable. Even if the two of them joined forces, they might not be able to defeat the other party. Pisong Qingshu then called Wang Yuyin in and asked her to memorize the mantra of the godly radiating scripture. He chose Wang Yuyin because he didn't want to leave behind a hard copy of the mantra. After all, the godly radiating scripture was given to him by Ding Dian, and he didn't want it to be spread too far without his permission. Wang Yuyin had a photographic memory, so she was the best candidate to memorize the mantra. Secondly, he wanted to give her something to protect herself. When he left, Heaven Mountain Tong Lao was worried that she would vent her anger on Wang Yuyin because of Li Qiushui. Wang Yuyin had something that could save Wu Yazi, so she wouldn't dare to harm Wu Yazi. Heaven Mountain Tong Lao and Li Qiushui didn't have any objections. They left the room to give the two a private space. Suddenly, Heaven Mountain Tong Lao had a strange expression on her face. She said to Li Qiushui, "Do you think that Song Qingshu has some ulterior motives?" What do you mean?" Li Qiushui was startled. Heaven Mountain Tong Lao snorted. "It's getting late. No matter how good your granddaughter's memory is, it will take her a few hours to memorize the mantra. By then, the sun will have risen. A man and a woman will be alone in a room for a night. Although nothing will happen, which man will dare to marry her?" Li Qiushui giggled. "What's wrong with that? That guy is skilled in martial arts and has a good character. Most importantly, he's handsome. He's the best candidate for a son-in-law." Heaven Mountain Tong Lao couldn't help but spit when she heard that Li Qiushui's appearance was the most important thing to her. A granddaughter and a granddaughter. You're really willing to part with them? Li Qiushui said proudly. "Who asked me to be so beautiful? My daughters and granddaughters are all like fairies. If you're so capable, why don't you give birth to a few?" Bastard. This hit the Heavenly Mountain Tong Lao's sore spot. Soon, the two of them started fighting again. Bang, bang, bang. A few hours later, the sky gradually brightened. In the room, Song Qingshu looked at Wang Yuyin, who was yawning. "Miss Wang, have you memorized it?" "Yes, it should be no problem." Wang Yuyin thought about it for a while and nodded slightly. Song Qingshu said apologetically, "I'm really sorry. You're not a martial artist, and I made you stay up all night. You must be very tired now." Wang Yuyin's face turned slightly red. "Brother Song, you're too kind. After all, this is to save my grandfather. Staying up all night is nothing. Your mother will be very happy to know that you've worked hard." Song Qingshu nodded. Wang Yuyin found it a bit strange. Why did he sound like he was her elder? And he kept mentioning her mother. Could it be that Song Qingshu's next words jolted her out of her reverie? "Oh, right, you can practice this divine radiating scripture yourself. It's good for self-defense, but I have a request. Don't teach it to your cousin." Wang Yuyin's face turned red. "Brother Song, even though I'm not a martial artist, I know the rules of the martial world. Why would I teach this martial art to someone else?" Song Qingshu laughed. "I'm just afraid that your mind is filled with your cousin, Brother Song." Wang Yuyin immediately pouted. All right, I'll stop." Song Qingshu hurriedly waved his hands. "Go back and rest." Wang Yuyin bade farewell to him and walked out. She suddenly stopped at the door and asked, "Brother Song, weren't you and my cousin quite close back then? Why do you have to be so hostile now?" Song Qingshu thought for a moment and answered, "In this chaotic world, it's meaningless to tell who's right and who's wrong. I can only say that I've already repaid what I owed him. When we meet again in the future, it'll all depend on our own abilities." Wang Yin sighed and walked out of the room with a heavy heart. Someone was standing at the door, and she almost ran into his arms. "Pia!" Wang Yin cried out in surprise and quickly stepped back. Unfortunately, she had spent an entire night and was now a bit dizzy. She lost her balance and fell backwards. Song Qingshu took a step forward and supported her from behind. He looked at Jiu Maji, who was at the door, and said angrily, Wisdom King, you are standing here without a sound. You scared Miss Wang. P. Jiomaji had a constipated expression on his face. I wanted to knock, but I didn't want to disturb the two of you. P. Wang Yuyin's face instantly turned as red as rouge. She whispered, I'll be going first. Then she left as if she was escaping. P. Song Qing Shu rolled his eyes. Miss Wang is very young. Wisdom King, you've gone too far with your joke. P. Jiomaji laughed. You left her in your room for a night, and now you have a nerve to criticize me? Don't you think that's a bit too much? P. Chapter 1840. What's wrong? Song Qing Shu picked up the cloth and saw many small words written on it. The first line read, Dark North Divine Technique. The handwriting was deep and powerful, the same as the writing on the cloth. Then it read, in the Zhuangzi Xiao Yao Yu, it says, to the north of the poor is the dark sea, the heavenly lake. There are fish thousands of miles wide, but no one knows their cultivation. Then it says, if the water is not thick enough, it will not be able to carry a big boat. Pour a cup of water on a hollow, and the boat will be made of mustard. Place a cup of glue, and the water will be shallow, but the boat will be big. Therefore, our sect's martial arts focus on the accumulation of internal energy. Since internal energy is thick, all the martial arts in the world can be used by us. Just like the Dark North, there is no boat big or small, no fish big or small. Therefore, internal energy is the foundation, and moves are the end. You must practice the following pictures with all your heart. P. Dark North Divine Technique. Song Qing Shu was surprised. He didn't expect Wu Yazi to use his special skills. Obviously, he didn't want to be outdone by his martial sisters. P. That's a good thing. Song Qing Shu laughed involuntarily. He had learned some of the martial arts of the carefree faction from Tang's sire and the others, but Tang's sire's knowledge was limited after all. This large roll of silk seemed to be the same as the picture scroll that Duan Yu had obtained in the original work, which recorded the essence of the carefree faction's martial arts. The martial arts of the carefree faction were extensive and profound, and could be used as a reference to learn from each other. POF course. With Song Qing Shu's current martial arts, it didn't matter whether he learned the Xiao Yao sect's martial arts or not. However, he had many female friends around him, and his own martial arts were not suitable for women to practice. He could use the Xiao Yao sect's martial arts to teach them. He slowly opened the scroll with his left hand and suddenly exclaimed, "Ha!" His heartbeat quickened. He suddenly understood why Li Qinglu had such a reaction. There was a painting of a naked woman lying on the scroll. She was completely naked, smiling sweetly. Her eyebrows, eyes, and cheeks were full of charm. You're still looking." Li Qinglu couldn't help but scold him when she saw him staring at the woman in the painting. Song Qing Shu laughed and said, "It's just a divine skill manual. It uses a woman's body to show the direction of the internal energy when practicing martial arts. Look at this green line, starting from the left shoulder, going horizontally to the neck, slanting to the right breast, and then to the armpit, extending to the right arm, passing through the wrist to the thumb of the right hand. The other green line extends down from the neck, passing through the abdomen and continuing downward until it is several centimeters away from the navel. The acupoints along the way are Yinmin, Zhongfu, Tianfu, Xiaba, Qizikong, the Like, Jingchu, Diyuan, Yujian, ends at the thumb, Shaoshang. Without a doubt, this is the northern underworld Shangong cultivation method. Although he said it calmly, his heart was still in turmoil. Wu Yazi's painting skills were truly uncanny. Although it was just a painting, her arms were white and her body was graceful and alluring. What was more amazing was that her skin was faintly rosy, no different from a real person. Song Qing Shu unfolded the scroll and saw that it was filled with portraits of the woman. Some were standing, some were lying, some were showing her chest, and some were showing her back. The faces of the portraits were all the same, but some were happy, some were sad, some had eyes full of emotion, and some were slightly angry. Their expressions were all different. There were a total of 36 portraits, and each portrait had a colored line that indicated the acupoints and the method of cultivation. The essence of the Xiao Yao sex kung fu is all here. The harvest this time is really not small. Song Qing-shu skimmed through the scroll. The kung fu recorded on the scroll mostly included the unique skills of Wu Yizi and Li Qiushui. It was only missing the 8 Desolation and 6 Directions Supremacy skill, Tianshan Plum Breaking Hand, and Tianshan 6 Yang Palm, and a few others. However, he either already knew about these skills, or they were recorded on the stone wall of the secret chamber in Vulture Palace. With the two combined, the Xiao Yao sex kung fu was complete. Just as he was lost in thought, Li Qinglu suddenly reached out and snatched the cloth away. "You're not allowed to look. I'm looking at the problem from an academic point of view." Song Qing-shu replied seriously. But Li Qinglu's face turned red. "It's the old princess." Song Qing-shu was stunned. No wonder it looked familiar. It was Li Qiushui when she was young. At that time, she was in her prime and even more beautiful than she was now. Nonsense. It's not old at all. Song Qing-shu's expression was a bit strange. He thought, what does Wu Yizi mean? It's okay that he gave me a kung fu scroll, but why did he ask his wife to teach me naked? He's really willing to do it. But he soon realized that Wu Yizi's limbs were disabled, so it was impossible for him to paint. It must be his work when he was young. He wanted to repay me, but he couldn't rewrite the scroll, so he could only take out the stock. Wu Yizi was already over 80 years old. He must have gotten over the romance between men and women. Besides, he was 50 years younger than Wu Yizi, so he probably treated him as a junior. Naturally, he didn't avoid it. Moreover, Wu Yizi was considered a distinguished man. The behavior of distinguished men in this world was often a little careless. Although he had roughly guessed the reason, Song Qing-shu still felt strange. No matter how young he was still a man. No, you can't look at it. Li Qinglu suddenly became a little excited. He's really a bastard. How can he be like this? Song Qing-shu held her in his arms and wantonly loved her. "Don't worry. I won't be willing to give your portrait away." Feeling his affection, Li Qinglu's breathing quickened. "If you dare to give my portrait away, I'll never talk to you again." I'm not that careless. Song Qing-shu couldn't help but say, "But it's not a bad idea to paint your most beautiful face when you're young." All women loved beauty. Li Qinglu couldn't help but be a little moved. "Meng Lang, you also know the art of painting?" No. Song Qing-shu immediately felt awkward. In his era, he had to use a camera to record these things. Otherwise, he wouldn't have caused the incident with Teacher Chun. But if he can find someone else to help, no. Li Qinglu's face turned pale. "I don't want to do this in front of others." As she said that, she glanced at the painting on the side, and her face became even redder. What are you thinking about?" "Of course, I'm going to find a woman to paint," Song Qing-shu said as he thought about who was good at painting. "Although your cousin doesn't know martial arts, she's good at music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. She has a close relationship with you, so you can find her." "I don't want to. It's so embarrassing." Li Qinglu suddenly froze and looked at him suspiciously. "I feel like you're interested in my cousin." Song Qing-shu smiled bitterly. "You're thinking too much. It's impossible between me and her." Why is it impossible?" Li Qinglu curled her lips. "I see that you two have a good relationship. She also has a good impression of you. Otherwise, why would a girl stay alone with a man in a room for a night?" That's to treat her grandfather's illness." Hearing the jealousy in her tone, Song Qing-shu couldn't help but laugh. No matter how much she treats you, it's because she trusts you from the bottom of her heart and doesn't have her guard up against you," Li Qinglu said with a smile. "Actually, you don't have to deny it. In any case, I don't mind. I have such a weak sister. In the future, she can help me fight for favor in the harem, and she won't threaten my position. Why would I push her away?" Song Qing-shu thought to himself. Only a fool would believe you. In this aspect, women's words should not be trusted at all. They're the best at fishing. All right. You don't have to make wild guesses. Her mother won't agree." Didn't you say that you're friends with her mother? Why wouldn't she agree?" Li Qinglu looked confused. She suddenly thought of something and revealed a half-smile. "We didn't do that to her mother, did you? P. Chapter 1841. What are you thinking about in that head of yours? Song Qing-shu was instantly drenched in sweat. A woman's intuition was truly terrifying. If it were someone else, he would not hide it. However, the matter with Li Qingluo was a little complicated. Moreover, her relationship with Li Qiushui and Wang Yuyin was probably not willing for outsiders to know about it. It was better to let her be the White Lotus Mother in peace. Oh, I thought so. Why would you like an old woman like that? Li Qinglu nodded and changed to a more comfortable position in his arms. Song Qing-shu was speechless. He thought that Li Qingluo was very bright and charming. How was she old? Also, look at how your old princess looks now. Don't you know that people of your branch are especially interested in staying young? Of course, he could only think about it. The carriage was a little bumpy, and it was easy for people to fall asleep in such an environment. Song Qing-shu had been busy all night, and very soon he felt sleepy. As Li Qinglu spoke, she suddenly realized that her lover did not respond. She looked up and couldn't help but smile. She helped him lie down in the carriage and propped her elbow on the side, looking at his sleeping appearance. I was worried that Meng Lang was an ugly monster. After sleeping for a few hours, Song Qing-shu felt much better after waking up. He ordered Su Xinghe's disciple to drive the carriage back, while he and Li Qinglu rushed back to the western Xia at full speed. Should we go back to Lingzhou City or Spirit Vulture Palace first? Song Qing-shu asked Li Qinglu's opinion when they were about to reach Lingzhou City. Li Qinglu had thought about this question countless times. We'll split up. You go to Spirit Vulture Palace and gather the forces there while waiting for an opportunity. I'll go back to Lingzhou City and secretly contact the former members of Class 1 Hall and the forces loyal to the old princess. That's good. Song Qing-shu admired Li Qinglu. She was not blinded by hatred and could still make a very calm judgment. But you're wanted everywhere in Lingzhou City. You should be careful. Li Qinglu pursed her lips and smiled. Don't worry. The old concubine has been operating in Lingzhou City for many years. Her influence will not disappear so easily. Besides, I have been in Class 1 Hall for many years. I naturally know how to protect myself. Seeing that she was so confident, Song Qing-shu was finally relieved. The two of them went their separate ways. Li Qinglu went to the spiritual state while he sped toward the Vulture Palace. After traveling for a few days, they arrived at the western region. Song Qing-shu suddenly realized a serious problem. He did not know where the Vulture Palace was. The western region was vast and sparsely populated to begin with. Coupled with the fact that the Spirit Vulture Palace had always been a mystery, very few people would know where it was located even if they met someone. What a pain in the ass. If I knew this would happen, I would have asked Tianshan Tonglao to draw a map for me. Looking at the vast desert, Song Qing-shu felt incredibly depressed. He had run so deep into the desert, and from the looks of it, he seemed to be lost. In truth, it was not difficult for him to turn back the way he came, but it would take too much time. Unless it was absolutely necessary, he did not want to go back. Just as he was hesitating, a series of hurried jingles of camel bells came from the southwest. Song Qing-shu turned to see a camel galloping toward him at high speed. On the camel sat a young girl who was dressed very differently from the women of the Central Plains. She was wearing a light red dress and a circle of ornaments on her head that could have been agate or jewel. The ornaments glistened under the sun, but she was not of a different race. Her face was elegant and refined, and her body was slender and delicate, like a typical Jiangnan girl. Miss, I want to ask you about a place. Song Qing-shu urged his horse forward and stopped in front of the young girl. Before he could ask, the young girl waved her hand in panic. Don't stop me. I have something important to do. Something important? Song Qing-shu paused, only then noticing the panic on her face. Get out of the way. Seeing that the other was stunned in front of her without any reaction, the young girl immediately cried. Tears streamed down her white, jade-like cheeks. Song Qing-shu was also confused. I just want to ask for directions. You don't have to be like this. Do I look like a bad person? No. No. The young girl shook her head like a rattle drum. I'm in a hurry to save someone. Get out of the way. Seeing that her bright and clear eyes were still filled with tears, Song Qing-shu felt a little embarrassed. But it was rare to meet someone in this desert. So how could he let this chance slip by? You're just a young girl. Judging from your messy breathing, your martial arts are not very good. How are you going to save someone? Song Qing-shu noticed that her dress was torn in several places, as if it had been torn by an external force. He could not help but ask in a low voice. I'm not going to save someone. I'm going to get help. The young girl was anxious and quickly explained. I'll help you save someone. In return, you have to be my guide. Seeing that her anxious face did not look fake, Song Qing-shu did not dare to delay and said directly, as for whether this young girl knew the whereabouts of Vulture Palace, it was not important. At least she could lead him out of the desert and find a town or market. It would not be too late to ask then. You? The young girl blinked her big eyes and looked at the man in front of her. She shook her head. You can't do it alone. There are many enemies. Song Qing-shu's heart skipped a beat, and he asked nervously, how many? Thousands? Tens of thousands? If they were fighting with an army, he would really be helpless. The young girl hurriedly waved her hands. Not that many. Just a few foreign monks. Song Qing-shu could not help but laugh. Then there's no problem. It's just a few foreign monks. He secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Judging from this young girl's reaction just now, she really thought that there was a 10,000 army nearby. Their martial arts are very good. The young girl still shook her head. My martial arts are also very high, Song Qing-shu said with a straight face. You? The young girl looked at him from head to toe. She felt that the man in front of her was not much older than her. Her eyes were filled with disbelief. Seeing that she was still hesitating, Song Qing-shu was worried that things would change if he delayed any longer. How far are the reinforcements you brought? Hearing him mention this, the young girl's tears flowed again. I don't know. I was separated from them. Then it's fine. Distant water cannot put out a nearby fire. Seeing that she was crying again, Song Qing-shu felt a headache coming on. Don't cry. I've never seen a woman who loves to cry as much as you do. Hurry and bring me to save someone. The young girl bit her lip. Thinking that her sister must have been in danger in order to save her, she nodded heavily. All right, come with me. Then she turned the camel around and galloped toward the southwest. Song Qing-shu followed her and asked, What's going on? You can tell me first. Chapter 1842. After listening to her narration, Song Qing-shu finally understood the gist of the story. The story was very cliché. She ran away from home alone, but on the way, she met a few foreign monks. Seeing that she was beautiful and alone, they had evil thoughts. Although she knew martial arts, the other side outnumbered her, and she was quickly overwhelmed. Fortunately, at this time, a black-robed woman passed by and helped her stop the crowd, allowing her to escape first. How is the black-robed woman's martial arts? Song Qing-shu asked. The girl thought for a moment and answered, Her martial arts are very exquisite, but she shouldn't be a match for those foreign monks. That's why I was in a hurry to find help. Song Qing-shu nodded. Suddenly, he thought of something and carefully looked at the girl's face. Miss, have we met before? Have we? The girl was stunned, and then her face immediately turned red. My grandmother said that men love to lie to little girls. You can't be the kind of person she said, right? Maybe I remembered wrongly. Seeing that the girl was staring at him with some vigilance, Song Qing-shu couldn't help but be speechless. However, his words did sound like he was hitting on someone, and it was a very clumsy way of hitting on someone. Although he did feel that the girl looked somewhat familiar, he had seen too many people over the years, so he wasn't sure whether he had seen her before or not. Suddenly, a voice came from the front. Smelly woman, how dare you ruin our plans? You injured a few of our brothers. Your martial arts are really ruthless. Unfortunately, you are not as beautiful as that girl just now. What bad luck. Why don't you go after that girl just now and leave this one to us? Don't even think about it. This desert is so vast. Where can I find that girl now? Although this girl is not as beautiful as that person, she still has some color. Let's have some fun first. Hearing their filthy words, Song Qing-shu frowned. The monks in the western regions were all good and bad. There were eminent monks like Jiumaji, but there were also scums like the Bloodblade school. Oh right, the foreign monks under the command of the Ryong mansion were not much better. The two climbed over a sand dune, and the scene on the other side was reflected in their eyes. They saw 7 or 8 foreign monks surrounding a woman. The woman was wrapped in a black cloak, and her face was originally covered with a black veil, but now it had already fallen. Her appearance could barely be considered as beautiful, but at this time, her eyebrows were full of despair and anger. Now, her body was covered with blood, and one arm was hanging down. Obviously, she had lost the ability to fight. Sister. When the girl saw that person, she anxiously cried out. The group of foreign monks followed the voice and looked over. When they saw her appearance, they couldn't help but be overjoyed. I didn't expect that little beauty to come back on her own. As for the man beside her, he was automatically ignored. When the black-robed woman saw her, she couldn't help but trembled with anger. You of this, and the yin-robed woman Sue. I came to save you, the girl said while riding the camel. You can't even save yourself. The black-robed woman was already thinking of looking for an opportunity to stab her to death with a sword, so that she wouldn't be humiliated. Haha, 2 little girls, don't worry, we can't bear to kill you. We still want to slowly play with you. The foreign monks laughed especially wantonly. I found reinforcements, the girl said in a panic. While saying that, she pointed at Song Qing-shu beside her. At this time, the two of them had already arrived near the black-robed woman. The black-robed woman looked at Song Qing-shu. Seeing that he was young and didn't look like he knew martial arts, she couldn't help but show a disappointed expression. On the other side, the foreign monks laughed wildly. Relying on this little white face? It just so happens that we don't have enough women for 2 of us. Look at his soft and tender skin. Let's first use him to have some fun. Noisy. Song Qing-shu's face sank. He raised his hand, and several sword energies shot out. Before the foreign monks could react, blood splattered everywhere, and they died on the spot. Normally, he rarely dealt heavy blows, but this kind of scum who robbed others of their wealth and sex would only harm more people if they were allowed to live. Huh? The girl and the black-robed woman were dumbfounded. In their eyes, these foreign monks who were highly skilled in martial arts died, just like that. They didn't even see what happened. Are you injured? Noticing that there was a big wound on the black-robed woman's arm, Song Qing-shu flicked his left middle finger in the air, sealing the acupoints near the woman's wound. The bleeding immediately stopped, and when he flicked his finger for the 6th time, a stream of true qi shot into the zhongfu acupoint at the base of her arm. The black-robed woman let out a loud, "Ah," and immediately felt a lot more comfortable. She immediately understood that Xiao Chun used a profound internal energy to heal her injury. She hurriedly thanked him. Thank you, young master, for saving me. I heard from this young lady that you met her by chance, but you risked your life to save her. This kind of chivalry is truly admirable. Song Qing-shu suddenly noticed that there was a black eagle embroidered on the chest of her cloak. It looked ferocious, and he couldn't help but be startled. Young lady, are you from the Vulture Palace? The black-robed woman was startled. That's right. Suddenly, she noticed the ring on Song Qing-shu's finger, and couldn't help but be startled. This is... Song Qing-shu raised the ring in his hand in front of her. Heavenly Mountain Tonglao has already passed the position of the Supreme Lord to me. Why don't you pay your respects to the new Supreme Lord? The black-robed woman was a little hesitant. Heavenly Mountain Tonglau's divine power was unparalleled. Logically speaking, unless it was voluntary, no one would be able to obtain her ring. However, there was a problem with Heavenly Mountain Tonglau's cultivation, and she went missing. It was very likely that she was killed by someone. If her enemy took her ring, seeing her doubt, Song Qing-shu was already prepared. He took out a letter from his bosom. This is written by Heavenly Mountain Tonglao herself. Take a look. The black-robed woman took it, and soon revealed an excited expression. It really is Heavenly Mountain Tonglau's handwriting. May I know how Heavenly Mountain Tonglao is doing now? Song Qing Shu answered. Heavenly Mountain Tonglau's divine power has recovered, but she coincidentally met a junior brother from the same sect, so she stayed there. Because she knew that the Vulture Palace is now facing a crisis, she asked me to come back to deal with the matters here. The black-robed woman no longer had any doubts. Your subordinate, Cheng Qing Shuang, the deputy chief of the Great Heaven Division, greets the new Supreme Lord. Rise. Hearing that she was the deputy chief of the Great Heaven Division, Song Qingshu nodded to himself. The direct power of the Vulture Palace was the 9 divisions of the 9 heavens, and each of the chiefs could hold their own. No wonder she could deal with so many foreign monks alone. The young girl at the side was dumbfounded. Sister, you are from the Vulture Palace? And you are their chief? Seeing the strange expression on her face, Song Qingshu asked, why are you so surprised? Do you have a grudge against the Vulture Palace? No. The young girl lowered her head, looking a little flustered. Song Qingshu became even more suspicious. Oh yes, I haven't asked for your name. The young girl blushed and said softly, Big brother, I am Ashio. Ashio. Song Qingshu suddenly thought of someone. Is your surname Li or Bai? The young girl's eyes showed a trace of surprise, but she quickly shook her head and said, No, big brother, my surname is Sure. Chapter 1843. This was very different from what Song Qingshu had imagined. If her surname was Li, she could be Li Wenxiu, the sister of Li Wan and Li Macho in this world. If her surname was Bai, she could be Snow Mountain Sex by Axiu, the main character in Journey of the Gallant. But this girl's surname was Sure, so he really didn't know where she came from. After thinking for a while, Song Qingshu felt that business was more important, so he turned to Cheng Qing Shuang and asked, Why are you here? Cheng Qing Shuang quickly answered, My lord, after the old master went missing, the 9 divisions of 9 heavens immediately went down the mountain and split up to search for the old master. Clear Heaven Division went to the east to welcome the old master. Yang Heaven Division went to the southeast. Scarlet Heaven Division went to the south. Zhu Heaven Division went to the southwest. Cheng Heaven Division went to the west. Yu Heaven Division went to the northwest. Xian Heaven Division went to the north. Phoenix Heaven Division went to the northeast. And Great Heaven Division guarded the palace. But who knew that the slaves of the 36 caves and 72 islands dared to attack the mountain when the old master was in trouble? Great Heaven Division guarded the path up the mountain, so the demons couldn't succeed. But Great Heaven Division was outnumbered and couldn't hold on for long, so they sent people to break out of the encirclement to ask for help. Song Qingshu frowned. Since you have a mission to ask for help, why did you delay halfway and forget about the important business? Cheng Qing Shuang's face turned pale, and she quickly answered, My lord, I deserve to die for delaying the important business. But most of the women in Vulture Palace have been bullied by men before, and when I saw this girl being molested by a group of foreign monks, I couldn't help but help. But I didn't expect these foreign monks to be so strong, and I was injured because I broke out of the encirclement, so the young girl on the side hurriedly pleaded with Song Qingshu, Big brother, big sister Cheng did it to save me. Please don't blame her, okay? She was so anxious that her tears fell uncontrollably as she spoke. Song Qingshu thought, Is this girl made of water? Why does she cry so easily? Coughing lightly, he continued to say, The Spirit Condor Palace is on the brink of destruction, and yet you've created new problems. One wrong move, and you've caused the thousands of sisters of the Spirit Condor Palace to fall into a miserable fate. You've saved one person, but harmed even more innocent people. Do you know your crime? This subordinate deserves 10,000 deaths. Cheng Qing Shuang's face was pale. Old Lady Tong had always been very strict with her subordinates. If she made such a mistake, she would definitely be miserable. Instead of living a life worse than death, she would rather die. She steeled her heart, took out the hook in her hand, and slid it across her neck. Song Qing-shu stretched out his hand and flicked the sharp blade away from her hand. He frowned and said, "Did I let you die?" I. Chung Qing-shuang was already shivering. Seeing her in such a state, Song Qing-shu knew that old Lady Tong was usually very strict with her. He sighed inwardly and said, "But out of so many people, you were the only one who found me. That's a great merit. Bring me back to Spirit Vulture Palace immediately. If we can make it back in time and resolve the crisis that Spirit Vulture Palace is in, not only will the merit offset the demerit, I will even reward you greatly." "Thank you for your mercy, Honorable Lord." "Thank you for your mercy, Honorable Lord." Chung Qing-shuang hurriedly kowtowed. "How far are we from Spirit Vulture Palace?" Song Qing-shu asked. Chung Qing-shuang pointed to the northwest. "We're 4 to 5 days away from Spirit Vulture Palace." 4 to 5 days? Song Qing-shu frowned. He did not know if the remaining forces of Spirit Vulture Palace could hold out for that long. "Let's set off immediately. We'll travel day and night." "Yes." Chung Qing-shuang hurriedly bowed, noticing that she was covered in dust and looked exhausted, knowing that her injuries were not light and that she had been traveling for days. Song Qing-shu threw a pill in her hand. "This is the 9 turns bear snake pill. It has a miraculous effect on injuries. Take it first. When we reach Spirit Vulture Palace, you can slowly recuperate and rest." As a high-ranking member of Spirit Vulture Palace, she naturally knew how rare the 9 turns bear snake pill was. She could not help but shed tears of gratitude. "Thank you for the pill, Honorable Lord. Let's go." Song Qing-shu beckoned. Just as he was about to leave, the girl named Ashio came over on her camel. "Big brother, let me go with you." Song Qing-shu looked at her doubtfully. "It's dangerous for us. Why do you want to get involved?" Ashio hurriedly said, "I was saved by Big Brother and Sister Chung. Now that you're in trouble, how can I just stand by and do nothing? I naturally have to help." Song Qing-shu could not help but laugh. "What can you do with your little martial arts skills?" Ashio's face turned red. "Although my martial arts skills are weak, but I can still defeat 1 or 2 enemies." Song Qing-shu was about to refuse, but on second thought, Chung Qing-shuang was injured and would definitely need to change her dressing. As a man, it would be somewhat inconvenient for him. This girl could take care of her along the way. "If that's the case, you can come with us. But let me make it clear, we'll be traveling day and night. You're weak. We won't have the time to take care of you." Ashio blushed and said, "I know martial arts. It's no problem for me to travel." Song Qing-shu nodded and did not say anything else. Then, the group hurried off in the northwest direction. After traveling for a few days, they suddenly heard what seemed to be the sound of camel bells in the wind. Chung Qing-shuang was overjoyed. "My lord, it seems that there are sisters nearby. I'll summon them." Seeing that Song Qing-shu nodded, she took out a short black tube from her bosom, buckled it on her middle finger, and flicked it upwards. A sharp whistle was heard from the tube, but as she was seriously injured and weak, the short tube fell down not long after it rose up. The sharp whistle also seemed to be weakening. Chung Qing-shuang's face was full of anxiety. Song Qing-shu stretched out his hand and waved it. The small tube seemed to have gained new strength, and in a flash, it shot straight up into the sky. It was almost invisible to the naked eye, but it was still making a woo-woo-woo sound. "My lord's power is unparalleled. I'm impressed." Chung Qing-shuang's face was filled with joy. The higher the opponent's martial arts, the easier it would be to resolve the crisis of Vulture Palace. After a while, urgent hoofbeats could be heard, mixed with the sound of bells. Song Qing-shu looked towards the sound and saw dozens of camels galloping towards them. The camels were all wearing light green cloaks. From afar, they looked like a piece of green cloud. A few women's voices could be heard. "My lord, I'm late. I deserve to die." "Eh." They heard the whistling sound coming from the clouds from afar. The only one in the entire Vulture Palace who had this kind of power was the Lord, so they thought that the girl of Heaven Mountain was nearby. But when they got closer, they only saw Chung Qing-shuang of the Great Heaven Tribe and a young man beside her. Where was girl of Heaven Mountain? Dozens of camels galloped towards them. Song Qing-shu saw that the riders were all women. The leader of the group was an old woman who looked to be in her 50s or 60s. The rest were young and old, ranging from 40 to 17 or 18 years old. No matter who they were, their cloaks all had a black eagle embroidered on them, looking ferocious. Song Qing could not help but complain. The child of Heaven Mountain's sense of beauty was really worrisome. The uniform looked very scary, and it was so wide that it covered the graceful curves of the women. In the future, when there was a chance to change the uniform of the entire Vulture Palace, what style would it be? Office lady, air stewardess, teacher, or nurse? How dare you? Why are you not greeting the new my lord? Seeing the women standing there and sizing him up, Cheng Qingshuang angrily rebuked. Actually, this was for their own good. If the my lord were to blame them, it would be even more irreparable. Chapter 1844. The old High Lord has already passed on his position to the new High Lord. I have the High Lord's ring and a handwritten letter as proof, Cheng Qingshuang said quickly. Then, she apologized to Song Qingshu. Please show me the old High Lord's token. Song Qingshu snorted. Just this once. I don't want to have to verify my identity every time. When the girls saw the jade ring in his hand, and then looked at Tong Lao's handwritten letter, only then did they believe the truth. Why are you here? Song Qingshu asked. My Supreme Lord, we have been searching for the old Supreme Lord's whereabouts. 2 days ago, we heard that the people of the 36 islands and 72 caves were rebelling. We hurried back to help. The leading old woman answered. Song Qingshu nodded slightly and suddenly asked, How should I address you? The old woman said, I am from the Clear Sky tribe. My husband's surname is Yu. The old Supreme Lord calls me Little Yu. My Supreme Lord can call me anything you like. Elder Tong was over 90 years old and could naturally be called Little Yu. Song Qingshu could not call her that and said, I will call you Granny Yu from now on. Granny Yu knelt on the ground and cried, My Supreme Lord, please have mercy. If you want to beat or kill me, I will accept it. I beg my Supreme Lord, please don't chase me out of Vulture Palace. Song Qingshu was shocked. Please get up. Why would I beat or kill you? He quickly helped her up. The rest of the girls knelt down and begged, My Supreme Lord, please have mercy. Song Qingshu was shocked and quickly asked for the reason. Only then did he know that when Granny Tong was angry, she would speak sarcastically and be especially polite to others. The other party would definitely suffer and suffer greatly. When Elder Wu and the other cave masters and island masters saw Granny Tong sending people to beat and insult them, they instead held a banquet to celebrate. They knew that there would be no more trouble. Now that Song Qingshu was polite to Granny Yu, the girls knew that he was going to punish her heavily. Despite his comforting words, the girls were still anxious. Song Qingshu could not help but complain that Heaven Mountain Elder Tong's quirks were quite perverted. Send someone to summon the other tribes. Now that Vulture Palace is in trouble, they need not find Granny Tong, Song Qingshu ordered. Granny Yu answered, My Supreme Lord, Zhutian Tribe Sure Saw is nearby. Scarlet Sky Tribe, Yang Tribe, Black Sky Tribe, Chung Sky Tribe, Dark Sky Tribe, and Chung Sky Tribe will gather in a few days. But Phoenix Sky Tribe is searching for the old Supreme Lord in the west. I'm afraid we will not be able. It doesn't matter. These people are enough. Go and gather the others first, Song Qingshu replied. The group rushed towards the northwest, with Song Qingshu alone in front, the other girls following behind his mount from a distance. Song Qingshu knew that this was the rule of the Spirit Vulture Palace, so he did not say anything. At this moment, there was only the girl named Ashio by his side. She glanced at the group of people behind them and could not help but say, Big brother, I didn't expect you to be the High Lord of the Vulture Palace. Song Qingshu smiled and said, Why? A young lady like you also knows about the Spirit Vulture Palace? Ashio sighed. The Vulture Palace is the overlord of 1,000 miles around Tianshan. How could I not know? From your tone, it seems like you're also from the Jianghu. Song Qingshu was puzzled. Ashio blushed. I'm at most half a Jianghu person. I see that although your martial arts are not high, you are upright and strict. You must be from a famous sect. Which sect do you belong to? Song Qing-shu asked. Xiao shook her head. My martial arts were all taught to me by my grandmother. I'm not from any sect. Song Qing-shu smiled and said, It seems that your grandmother is a strange person. After the two of them chatted for a while, Song Qing-shu summoned Cheng Qing-shuang over. After all, he knew nothing about the situation in Spirit Vulture Palace and wanted to ask her about it. After Cheng Qing-shuang left, the group of women quietly surrounded Granny Yu and chattered. Granny Yu, is this person really our new lord? With the sect master's ring and the old lord's handwritten letter, how could it be fake? Granny Yu glared at the person. But old Lady Tong has always hated men. Most of the women in Spirit Vulture Palace have been hurt by men. Why would the old lord pass his position to a man? Another woman said. Granny Yu was also puzzled and could only answer, We dare not speculate on the old lord's thoughts. Another woman said, What's more important now is the rebellion of the 36 islands and 72 caves. They have many people, and I heard that they have invited many famous masters from the Jianghu. I don't know if we can successfully quell the rebellion when we return. Her words resonated with everyone, and they began to worry. If only old Lady Tong was here. The old lord's martial arts are unparalleled, and these clowns are no match for him. The new lord's martial arts should not be bad, since the old lord passed his position to him. But the new lord is still young and looks more like a scholar. Granny Yu, can you tell what the new lord's martial arts is like? Granny Yu smiled bitterly. The whistling arrow he used earlier shows that his martial arts should not be low. But after careful observation, I don't see any signs of martial arts on the new lord. Maybe his martial arts are too high and he has returned to his natural state. It's not surprising that I can't tell. The group of women was instantly disappointed. How can that be? Granny Yu, you're the #1 master in the palace other than the old lord and the saint. If you can't tell, he must not know any martial arts. It's a pity that we lost contact with the saint after she arrived at the Central Plains. If she was here, we would not be so passive. Cheng Qing-shuang, who was walking in front, turned pale and said to Song Qing-shu, Lord, I will go and tear those girls' mouths. They were at a disadvantage. Even if the people behind them deliberately lowered their voices, they could still hear them with the help of the wind. Song Qing-shu said calmly, It's okay, they're just worried about the safety of the Vulture Palace. But Lord, your martial arts are unparalleled. Among the people present, she was the only one who knew how high the new lord's martial arts was. He was even better than the old lord. Now that she saw the people behind them talking nonsense, she naturally felt indignant. You will know when we arrive at the Vulture Palace. Seeing that she was about to say something, Song Qing-shu said calmly, Do you want me to perform martial arts in front of them now? I dare not. Cheng Qing-shuang hurriedly bowed and apologized. All right, I have asked what I need to ask. You may leave. Song Qing-shu waved his hand. Also, don't say anything to them. Yes. After Cheng Qing-shuang left, Xiao couldn't help but say, Big brother, you were so fierce just now. No, not fierce, but I didn't even dare to breathe. Song Qing-shu smiled slightly. You are not my subordinate. What are you afraid of? Oh yes, when we're near the Vulture Palace, you must follow me at all times, in case of any danger. He had a good impression of this delicate girl who loved to cry, and naturally did not want anything to happen to her. Xiao's face was instantly covered with a layer of rouge, and she whispered, Thank you, big brother. Seeing her delicate and shy look, Song Qing-shu secretly sighed. Looks are justice. If it was someone else, I am afraid that I would be lucky to just save her. Why would I take care of her like this? After rushing day and night, they finally saw a mountain in the northwest corner of the clouds. Cheng Qing-shuang said, Master, this is the Misty Peak. This mountain is covered in clouds all year round, and from afar, it is faintly discernible. That is why it is called the Misty Peak. Song Qing-shu said, Looks like it is still very far away. Let's get there a little earlier. Let's hurry through the night. He had originally planned to go first, but he had never been to the Vulture Palace and really did not know the way. In addition, there were many enemies on the peak, and it would be troublesome if he went alone, so he decided to bring the people of the 9 heavens' 9 divisions with him. All the women replied, "Yes. Thank you for your concern, Master, for the Great Heaven Division." The Great Heaven Division was guarding the Vulture Palace alone, and they were outnumbered. It seemed that the situation was now critical. After the meal, they rode on the camel and continued their journey. Chapter 1845. By now, they had reached the top of the peak. Cheng Shuang had already told the girls that when she descended the peak, the enemy had already attacked the Broken Soul Cliff. 11 of the 18 natural strongholds on Misty Peak had been lost, and more than half of the Great Heaven Division girls had died. The situation was extremely dangerous. Song Qingshu saw that there was not a shadow of a single person at the bottom of the peak. Between the pure white snow, there were green grass sprouting. If he had not known in advance, he would not have thought that this piece of tranquility contained an infinite amount of murderous intent. The girls looked worried about the safety of their sisters from Great Heaven Tribe. Zhu Tian Division Leader Shi saw Druer's saber and said loudly, "In the Misty 9 Heavens, 8 Heavens divisions are at the bottom of the peak, and only 1 division is left to defend. The scoundrels have taken advantage of the situation and are extremely shameless. Master, please give the order for everyone to rush up the peak and fight to the death with these scoundrels." Her expression was very impassioned. But Granny Yu said, "Sister Shi, don't be impatient. The enemy is strong, and Great Heaven Division is relying on the 18 natural strongholds on the peak to hold out for so long. Now that we are at the bottom of the peak, the enemy has turned the tables and is now occupying the higher ground." Shirsa said, "What do you think?" Granny Yu said, "Let's not make a sound and quietly go up the peak. The longer the enemy realizes, the better." Song Qingshu nodded and said, "Granny Yu's words are in line with the art of war. Pass the order down. Let everyone go up the mountain quietly and avoid alerting the enemy." The 8 teams quietly went up the mountain. Once they reached the peak, the strength of each person's lightness kung fu was immediately revealed. Song Qingshu saw that although Granny Yu, Shirsa, and the other leaders were women, their feet were very fast, and he secretly nodded. A strong general indeed has no weak soldiers. With the help of this force, when the time comes to deal with Western Xia's Li Liangzhua, we will have a better chance. As they walked past the natural strongholds, they saw traces of broken swords and broken trees and stones. It was obvious that when the enemy passed through, they had experienced a cruel battle. After passing Broken Soul Cliff, Lost Feet Cliff, 100 Feet Stream, they arrived at the connecting bridge. They saw that the iron chain bridge between 2 cliffs had been cut into 2 with a treasured saber. The distance between the 2 cliffs was about 50 feet, and it was difficult to cross. The girls looked at each other in astonishment and thought, could it be that all the sisters of Great Heaven Tribe have died? All the girls knew that the Heavenly Bridge was the only way to connect the 2 natural strongholds, the 100 Zhang Mountain Stream and the Immortal Worries Gate. Although it was called a bridge, it was actually just an iron chain. It spanned the cliffs on both sides and led to a deep valley filled with jagged rocks. Those who came to the Spirit Vulture Palace were naturally all highly skilled in martial arts, so it was not difficult for them to pass through the ropes. This time, when Cheng Qingshuang went down the peak, the enemy had only attacked to the Broken Soul Cliff, which was still far from the Heaven-connecting bridge. But Great Heaven Division was already prepared. They sent people to guard the iron chain. When the enemy attacked, they opened the iron lock in the middle of the iron chain. The iron chain was divided into 2 parts. This 50 feet wide deep valley was not wide, but to leap over it was not something that could be done by any lightness skill in the world. By now, the ladies saw that the iron chain was cut by a sharp blade. Most likely the enemy had arrived, and the ladies of Great Heaven Tribe didn't have the time to break the chain. Shirsa waved her willow leaf knife and called out, "Granny Yu, quickly think of a way to cross over." Granny Yu said, how to cross over? That won't be easy." Before she finished her sentence, they suddenly heard 2 miserable cries from behind the opposite mountain. It was the voice of a woman. The lady's blood surged. They all knew that their sisters from Great Heaven Division had been killed by the enemy. They wished they could grow wings and fly over to fight the enemy to the death. But no matter how loudly they shouted, they couldn't fly over the natural stronghold. Supreme Lord, what should we do? Only Cheng Qingshuang came to Song Qingshu's side to ask for advice. The other ladies gathered together to discuss a solution. It seemed that they didn't expect this new Supreme Lord to be able to help. Xiao walked to the edge of the cliff and looked down. She saw clouds and mist curling around it. The cold wind was biting cold. She couldn't see the bottom at all. She looked a little longer, and her legs became weak. She quickly retreated a few steps and said, "Big brother, I'm scared." Song Qingshu looked at the distance on the opposite side and roughly estimated, "It doesn't seem that far." Cheng Qingshuang's expression changed drastically. "Supreme Lord, you can't take the risk." She knew that Song Qingshu's martial arts was very high. But this deep ravine that even Tong Lao had to rely on the iron chain for support was 50 feet deep. It really didn't seem like anyone could cross it without any effort. "It doesn't matter." Song Qingshu ordered the ladies around him. "Each of you take off your outer cloaks and link them together to form a rope. The rest of you go and find a long enough iron chain as a backup." Although they were somewhat puzzled, the ladies still moved at his command. The people of Vulture Palace were all women and were good at needlework. It didn't take long for them to make a rope that was 6 feet long. Song Qingshu tied one into a tree and then came to the edge of the cliff. At this time, the ladies also guessed what he was going to do. Although they didn't believe that he could cross such a deep ravine, they still admired him. "Supreme Lord, do you need us to help you?" Since Song Qingshu had made up his mind, it was not good for the others to dissuade him. Granny Yu and the others came to his side, thinking that if they could use their inner force to push him, it might increase the success rate. "No need." Song Qingshu smiled slightly and took a step forward. "Supreme Lord." The group of women were shocked. One should know that he was originally standing on the edge of the cliff. One step forward and he would fall into the abyss. But their voices soon stopped abruptly. Instead, they were all so shocked that they couldn't speak. Falling into the abyss did not happen. Instead, what came into view was the scene of Song Qingshu walking step by step towards the other side of the river. Ashio couldn't help but rub her eyes. "Am I seeing things?" There was clearly nothing beneath Song Qingshu's feet, but it was as if he was walking on flat ground, as if there was an invisible bridge beneath his feet. How is this possible? Some palace servants didn't believe it and tried to take a step forward. They almost fell into the deep ravine. Only then did they realize that there was no invisible bridge in front of them. Cheng Qingshuang was extremely excited. Supreme Lord's divine power is unparalleled. The sisters of the Great Heaven Tribe can be saved. The crowd of palace servants cheered. Before, they only respected this young new Supreme Lord on the surface, but in private, they didn't think much of him. But now, everyone was convinced from the bottom of their hearts. At this time, Song Qingshu had already reached the other side of the river. He tied the other end of the rope to a big tree and said to them, "Prepare some cloth chains and iron chains. Choose a few who are skilled in martial arts and come slowly along this rope. Build a few more bridges and bring the sisters of the Great Heaven Tribe over. I will go ahead and explore the way." Granny Yu and the others were surprised, impressed, and grateful. They said in unison, "Master, be careful." Song Qingshu ran to the back of the mountain where the screams came from. After passing through a narrow stone lane, he saw 2 corpses lying on the ground. Their heads were separated from their bodies, and blood was still flowing from their necks. He couldn't help but frown. In the original work, Shuju not only forgave the rebellion of the people of the 36 caves and 72 islands, but also released the life and death spell for them. But so many women of the Vulture Palace were killed and injured. Who will avenge them? Shuju didn't have to think about this because he had the cheat code of the protagonist, but he had to think about it in the real world. After all, he was a new Supreme Lord. If he didn't handle it well, he would easily lose the support of the 9 Heavens tribes. But he still needed the strength of the people of the 36 islands and 72 caves to deal with the western Xia country. It was really a headache. Song Qingshu pondered along the way and walked quickly along the path to the peak. The higher he went, the thicker the white fog around him became. In less than 2 hours, he had reached the top of the misty peak. In the fog, there were pine trees everywhere, but he couldn't hear a single sound. He couldn't help but feel his heart sink. Did they kill all the women of the Great Heaven Tribe? He saw an underground road paved with bluestones. Each bluestone was about 8 feet long and 3 feet wide. They were very neat. To pave such a road, it was a huge project. It seemed that the women of Tong, Lao, couldn't have done it. The bluestone road was about 2 miles long. At the end of the road, a huge stone castle stood majestically. On both sides of the castle gate, there was a stone eagle statue, which was more than 3 feet high. It had a sharp beak and huge claws, and it looked extraordinary. The gate of the castle was half closed, and there was still no one around. Song Qingshu flashed through the gate and passed through 2 courtyards. He heard a stern shout. "Where's the place where the thief hid the treasure? Are you going to tell me or not?" A woman's voice scolded. "Dog slave, do you think we still want to live? Don't even think about it." Chapter 1846. The island master with a surname Yin said, "Humph, it's easy for you girls to die, but how can there be such a good thing in the world? My Jadestone Island has 17 types of strange punishments. I will test them on you girls one by one. I heard that the strange punishments of Blackstone Cave and Hidden Shark Island are much more severe than those of my Jadestone Island. Why don't you brothers broaden your horizons?" Many people cheered loudly. There was even someone who said, "Everyone, feel free to have a competition. Let's see which cave and which island's punishment is effective first." Song Qingshu snorted. Although these people were pitiful to be controlled by the life and death talisman of Heavenly Mountain Tonglao, they were frequent robbers. Even if they were all killed, there would be no injustice. From the voices, there were at least a few hundred people in the hall. With the echoes in the hall, it was extremely noisy. Song Qingshu wanted to find a crack in the door to see what was going on. However, the hall was made of huge rocks, and there were no cracks at all. In a flash, he concealed his breath and walked into the hall. The hall was already chaotic, and his martial arts was much higher than the rest. He executed Imminent Skyline and blended into the center of the crowd. No one noticed him. The tables and chairs in the hall were filled with people. Most of them did not have seats and sat on the floor. There were also some who walked around and chatted casually. There were over 20 women in yellow sitting on the floor. It was obvious that their acupoints were sealed and they could not move. More than half of them were covered in blood and were heavily injured. They were the Great Heaven Tribe's women. Song Qingshu looked around and saw Boss Wu sitting on an armchair in the west. His face was haggard, but his eyes were still filled with ruthlessness. A burly black man with a whip stood beside the Great Heaven Tribe's women. He kept scolding them, threatening them to reveal the location of Grandma Tong's treasures. But the women refused to say. Elder Wu said, "You girls are really stubborn. Let me tell you, Old Tong and her junior sister Li Qiushui have long since jumped into the bottomless abyss, their bodies smashed to pieces. This is something that we saw with our own eyes. Could it be fake? If you surrender now, we will not make things difficult for you." A middle-aged, yellow-robed woman shrieked, "Nonsense! Her honor's martial arts are unparalleled, and she has cultivated the diamond body unbreakable. Who can hurt her? Don't even dream of stealing the incantation to break the life-death talisman. Not to mention that the great master will be safe and sound. She will come to the peak in the blink of an eye to punish you, the unpardonable traitors. Even if she passes away and your life and death notes are not undone, you will all die in pain within a year." Boss Wu said coldly, "Fine, it's fine if you don't believe us." But at that time, Gusu's young master Murong and sword god Mr. Zhubu Fan were also present. They are all famous people in the pugilistic world. They can't possibly be lying. Murong Fu and Zhuotong, Murong Fu and Tong Tong, Murong Fu and Zhui Fu, Zhui said Tong. Hearing the two of them saying this, The great Heaven tribeswomen guessed that Boss Wu's words were true, and they couldn't help but burst into tears. The group of cave masters and island masters cheered loudly, all saying, "The old thief is dead. This is wonderful." Someone said, "The whole world rejoices. The thin sea rejoices together." Someone said, "Boss Wu, you are so patient. You had such good news until now. You should drink 3 cups of wine as punishment." Someone else said, "Since the old woman is dead, if no one in the world can break the life-death talisman." Suddenly, a few howling sounds came from the crowd. It sounded like the howling of a wolf and the barking of a dog. It was a terrifying sound. Everyone's expression changed when they heard it. In an instant, there was no other sound in the hall other than the howling of a wounded beast. They saw a fat man rolling around on the ground, scratching his face and tearing his clothes. Then he scratched his chest as if he wanted to dig out his heart and lungs. In just a moment, his hands were covered in blood. His face and chest were also covered in blood. His cries became more and more miserable. Everyone retreated as if they had seen a ghost. A few people whispered, "The life-death talisman is coming." Song Qingshu thought that the life-death talisman was indeed the number 1 hidden weapon in the world. Once activated, the person would be in a state where they could not live or die. It was a powerful weapon to control people. Everyone seemed to be afraid that the poison of the life-death talisman was contagious. No one dared to come forward and try to reduce his pain. In just a moment, the fat man's clothes were torn to pieces and his body was covered in scratches. Someone in the crowd shouted angrily, "Brother, calm down, don't panic." Someone ran out and shouted again, "Let me seal your acupoint and we'll think of a way to cure you." That person looked similar to the fat man. He was younger and not as fat. Obviously, he was the fat man's twin brother. The fat man's eyes stared straight as if he did not hear anything. That person walked over step by step, his expression full of caution and fear. When he was 3 feet away from the fat man, he suddenly stretched out a finger and sealed the fat man's shoulder while acupoint. The fat man moved to the side and avoided the finger. He turned his arm and hugged the fat man tightly. He opened his mouth and bit his face. That person shouted, "Brother, let go. It's me." The fat man only bit randomly like a mad dog. His brother struggled with all his strength, but he could not break free. In a split second, a piece of flesh was bitten off his face. Blood was dripping, and he could only scream in pain. Island Master Yun grabbed a woman in yellow and shouted, "Most of the people in the hall have been hit by the old witch's life-death talisman. Now that they're gathered together, they can sense each other. Soon everyone will act up, and hundreds of people will bite your body to pieces. Aren't you afraid?" That woman looked at the fat man, and a terrified expression appeared on her face. Island Master Yin said, "Anyway, Old Tong is dead. If you tell us where she is hiding and cure everyone, everyone will be very grateful. No one will make things difficult for you." That woman said, "It's not that I don't want to tell you. It's just that no one knows. Lord will not let us, your servants, see what he does." Even though Island Master Yin knew that what the woman in yellow said was mostly true, he felt his acupoint that was hit by the life-death talisman. It seemed to be showing signs of acting up. In a rage, he shouted, "Fine, you won't tell me. I'll beat you to death first." He raised a long whip and hit the woman's head. The whip was heavy and fierce, and the woman's head was about to be smashed. At this time, Zhuo Bufan, who was near him, suddenly attacked. Island Master Yun's expression changed greatly. He hurriedly let go of the woman in yellow and took a few steps back. He glared at him and said, "Zhuo Bufan, what are you doing?" Seeing Zhuo Bufan suddenly attack, Song Qingshu also gave up on the idea of attacking and decided to see what would happen first. Zhuo Bufan said unhurriedly, "Since the old witch is dead, they're the only people who might know about the life-death talisman. If we kill them, who can cure the poison in your bodies?" Island Master Yin snorted and said, "It's not like you didn't hear what they said just now. How would they know the way to cure the life-death talisman?" Zhuo Bufan smiled slightly and said, "Of course, it's impossible for Tianshan Tonglao to tell them such a top-secret thing, but they serve her day and night, so they probably know her habits, such as the secret practice room. Maybe the way to cure the life-death talisman is hidden there. Even if they don't know anything, we can use them to threaten the Holy Virgin of the Spirit Vulture Palace, who is wandering outside. The Holy Virgin most likely knows. Hearing his analysis, everyone felt that it was very reasonable. Originally, they had no hope of curing the poison, but now there was a glimmer of hope, so they all praised Joie Bouffon's foresight. Joie Bouffon turned to the woman in yellow and asked, "Does Old Tong have a place for closed-door meditation?" The woman in yellow was grateful to him for saving her life. Hearing this, she replied, "Old Tong usually has a secret room for closed-door meditation, but she never allows us to go in, so we don't know what's going on inside." Joie Bouffon was overjoyed and said, "Tell me one person. I guarantee that no one will dare to hurt your life." At this time, Morong Fu suddenly stepped forward and said, "Brother Joie, this is a little unkind. If I only tell you, won't the life-death talisman be controlled by you again?" At that time, the island masters and cave masters who have just driven Old Tong away will be under your control again. He came here to buy people's hearts. Just now, seeing that Joie Bouffon had gained the support of everyone, he knew that he couldn't let things go on like this. After being reminded by Murong Fu, everyone came to their senses. Xian Xuanqing, the cave master of Wuliang Cave of Dali, said, "If Mr. Zhuo wasn't suffering from the poison of the life-death talisman, why did you do everything possible to find the way to cure it? If Mr. Zhuo is trying to coerce us, then the brothers of the 36 caves and 72 islands who have just escaped from the lion's kiss and entered the tiger's mouth, I'm afraid they may not be willing. Although Mr. Zhuo's swordsmanship is divine, if you force us into a dead end, we have no choice but to risk our lives." Joie Bouffon's long sword shook and made a buzzing sound. In an instant, he drew a sword mark in front of him and said, "Miss, don't be afraid. With you by my side, let's see who can touch a single hair on your body. You can only tell me about Old Tong's secret room. If a third person knows, I won't be able to protect you." Seeing his sword aura and thinking of the day when he killed the island master of Flying Fish Island with one move, the island masters and cave masters all showed fear and didn't dare to step forward. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.